Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this special January 11, 2021 hearing of the San Francisco Immigrant Rights Commission. Our topic for this evening is immigration reform and COVID-19 recovery in 2021 and beyond. We're delighted to have you all with us this evening, and to start our meeting, I would like to ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Thank you. Chair Kennelly?
Here.
Thanks. Vice Chair Fox?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Ansani?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Fuji?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Guy?
Here.
Thanks. Commissioner Kajaste?
Here.
Thanks. Commissioner Monhe?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Radwan?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Rahimi?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Ricarte?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Ruiz? Thank you. I see Commissioner Ruiz. Thank you. And Commissioner Wang?
Here.
Thank you. All commissioners are present. We have a quorum.
Oops. Sorry, thank you. I get my unmute skills back up and running again. Thank you, Clerk Shore, and good evening, Commissioners. Welcome to you all. So this evening, I would like to thank you all for attending this special hearing. It has been, needless to say, we will all feel the same, that it has been a tumultuous and disturbing week. So we appreciate your willingness to share and the opportunity for us to learn from all of our invited speakers and those members of the public who will be before us this evening. Our first order of business are announcements. Director Pan, are there any announcements for the Commission this evening?
Thank you, Chair. Just some short announcements, everyone. We have received a request for interpretation services and have them available in Cantonese and Spanish. For members of the public who need language assistance, you will get instructions on calling the dial-in numbers, and our office manager, Melissa, our host, Melissa Chan, will also repeat that a couple of times. At this time, may I ask our interpreters to address the public? Agnes, Vivian, and Arturo.
Sí, buenas noches. Esta reunión se puede escuchar en español. Si quiere escuchar esta reunión en español, por favor llame al 415-906-4659, seguido por 516-516-039, más la tecla de numeral una vez. Esta línea se utilizará únicamente para escuchar la reunión. Si desea dar su comentario público, llame al 415-655-0001, seguido por el código de la reunión 146-121-5191, más la tecla de numeral dos veces para ponerse en línea. En la línea de espera, por favor, marque el asterisco 3. Gracias.
大家好，如果你想參與今日嘅移民權益委員會特別聽證會議，除咗可以喺網上參與，仲可以撥打電話1415-655-0001，然後輸入訪問代碼146-121-5191。呢次會議有廣東話嘅口譯服務。如果你需要聽廣東話嘅現場口譯，請打廣東話翻譯熱線電話1-415-906-4659。會議 ID 517-986-047，請撥打呢個電話號碼，只能夠聆聽會議。如果你要發表公眾評論，請喺會議中仔細聆聽我哋公眾評論環節嘅操作。多謝。Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And just a reminder to all participants and members of the public, this is a virtual remote meeting of the San Francisco Immigrant Rights Commission during the coronavirus COVID-19 emergency. The Immigrant Rights Commission's regular meeting room at City Hall is closed. The full commission will convene remotely. Members of the public can access the meeting and make public comment online or by phone. This meeting is also being recorded as part of the public record. Thank you very much. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Pan. Perfect. And thank you to our interpreters who are joining us this evening. We very much appreciate having you with us and making sure that everybody has the access that they need. So our next order of business, I would like to hand to our Vice Chair, Vice Chair Paz. I believe that we have a very special item on the agenda this evening. Vice Chair, you're still muted.
Thank you, Chair Kennedy, and to my fellow commissioners. Our longtime former colleague and friend, Commissioner Melba Maldonado, has recently announced her retirement. And we'd like to use this opportunity to honor her. And we are going to be issuing the following recognition for her service to the community and the city. Whereas Melba Maldonado has contributed tremendously to the betterment of immigrant communities in San Francisco. And whereas Melba Maldonado has served as Executive Director of La Raza Community Research Center since 1996 and has dedicated her life to serving and advocating for immigrants in vulnerable populations. And whereas Melba Maldonado has supported, mentored, and championed the dreams, aspirations, and issues of concern for Latino and immigrant communities. And whereas Melba Maldonado has played a vital role in the betterment of immigrant communities in the 7 years she served on the Immigrant Rights Commission. And whereas San Francisco has greatly benefited from Melba Maldonado's courage and outspoken defense of equity, justice, and our democracy. Now and therefore be it resolved that the San Francisco Immigrant Rights Commission, in partnership with the Office of Civic Engagement and Immigrant Affairs, takes this opportunity on this 11th day of January 2021 to recognize Melba Maldonado for her outstanding contributions, leadership, and dedicated service to immigrant and communities to the betterment of all in the city and county of San Francisco. We wish her all the best in her well-deserved retirement. Thank you, Melba. I'm not sure if you've joined us, but thank you very much. Love you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think she's.
Yep.
Melba,
Thank you so much. I don't know if
congratulations. Would you like to say a few words?
I just joined and I heard my name. Mario, thank you. Commissioners, thank you. Adrian, thank you so much. You're a very special person in my life for such a long time. And all what you do, all of you. Thank you. I was not expecting this. I just thought it's a very important subject and I wanted to hear and, you know, be here to pay attention. I love you all and I would never have been able to do anything without the support and working along with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Melba. Back to the chair. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Vice Chair Paz. And that was just a wonderful surprise, Melba. Congratulations. I hope to God that we'll still see you around the block. You won't be going that too far away from us. But enjoy your retirement. It is very well deserved. So thank you for everything that you have done. And I know that you will continue to do. Okay, so we shall move on to this evening's hearing. I think it's safe to say that the shocking and disturbing events of this past week have demonstrated how fragile and precious our democracy is. For those of us who respect and value America and all the good that it stands for, we will need your continued courage and commitment to the ideals of a just, equal, democratic, safe and free county and country. If there was ever a right time to talk about immigration reform and the millions of immigrants who have helped to build this country, it is now. As you know, the Immigrant Rights Commission has been working on immigration reform for over 10 years. The past 4 years have been extremely painful and difficult for our immigrants. Layered on top of that was the global COVID-19 pandemic, which took a great toll on our first responders, our immigrants, BIPOC and other vulnerable communities. Many immigrants are first responders and essential workers, and we will hear more from them tonight. I would like to acknowledge the Executive Committee and the entire Immigrant Rights Commission in partnership with Director Pan and the Office of Civic Engagement and Immigrant Affairs for organising this hearing. Many thanks to Commissioner Guine, who also reached out to many community members so that their voices could be heard tonight. Vice Chair Paz, would you like to say a few words of welcome this evening?
Thank you to the chair. No, I want to first of all thank all of our presenters that have joined us here this evening. We value all the important work that you're doing in the community. There is a dawn of a new day, and we hope to collectively work together for immigrant justice and for all of our communities in San Francisco. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So we do have quite an agenda this evening, and to make sure that we get to hear from everybody, except for presentations, we ask that our partners keep their remarks to 3 minutes. And I do believe one of the members of staff will be timing and will be giving you a heads up as to when you reach that time frame. So this evening we are honoured to have a true champion of immigrants with us tonight, Assemblymember David Chu, whom we all know as a tireless champion and leader. David is the former president of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, and I mean has been such a partner of the Commission of the immigrant community, and we're just always eternally grateful for David's support and his presence. So thank you, Assemblymember. Looking at our running order this evening, I know that Assemblymember Chu will need to leave, so we are going to have him as our first speaker this evening. And I'm just confirming that Assemblymember Chu is with us. Is it Assemblymember Chu with us yet? Okay, we're not sure that we have him just yet. Kenneth, do you happen to have an update?
Yeah,
on
Assemblymember Chu should be
arrival.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, he's here.
Ah, yes, Assemblymember, welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Great.
And the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Is my video showing?
No, not yet.
You know what? This is a new platform for me, so I am trying to figure this out in real time. If there's someone on the back end who might be able to turn my video on. Let's see. It looks like I'm just on with audio, but you know what? Listen, I'll just out of the time constraints, let me just first thank the Commission. Before I was elected, you have been doing incredible work to stand up for our immigrants and our immigrant rights. And as a son of immigrants and as a former immigrant rights attorney, I just thank you for your service. Thank you for engagement, particularly during these very, very dark years. And maybe what I'll do in 3 minutes is just take a moment and talk about what we've been doing this past year, what we're hoping to do at the state level coming up. But, you know, obviously the nightmare known as the Donald Trump administration is coming to a close, but appreciate our work together to count everyone in the census, including all of our immigrant families, to fight the public charge doctrine that has been denying a social safety net for our vulnerable immigrant families. A lot of you we've all worked together to try to ensure that our San Francisco residents who have been fighting deportations by the Trump administration get the support that they need. And I also know during this time period, there are so many social services that have been difficult to access by our immigrant communities that we've all been working to really achieve language access as well as actual access. This past year, I was proud that the state of California, we really led the nation in establishing the first economic fund for undocumented workers, for workers who did not have access to unemployment benefits and being able to put some food on the table through the fund we had. We also were able to expand some portions of our earned income tax credit to undocumented families. And this is something that I'm super focused on. What I can tell you this coming year, in the midst of this pandemic, in the midst of this social unrest, in the midst of this recession, is many of us, particularly from the Asian caucus and the Latinx caucus, we are at this very moment trying to figure out priorities for this year. I will just mention a few. At the top of the list is continuing the fight to provide healthcare for all. The idea that just because of your immigration status, you would be denied healthcare is something that many of us are just morally offended by. So we are moving forward a bill, AB4, to move forward an agenda of providing healthcare regardless of immigration status to every Californian. On a different front related to the social safety net, for folks who are unemployed workers who are otherwise eligible for unemployment benefits, but because of language access can't get the assistance that you are owed. I've been working with immigrant rights advocates and language access advocates to move forward a conversation of how we get billions of dollars of relief to folks who at this moment can't because of their language. Two other things I'll just mention. At the end of this month, if we do not extend the eviction moratorium, we could potentially see 2 million Californians at risk of displacement. And there are many, many immigrant families that are part of that. So I'm working around the clock. In fact, in 11 minutes, have to convene a negotiation over that conversation. So hopefully that will change and we'll continue the protections. I will mention there is $2.6 billion of federal relief coming to tenants and struggling landlords during this time period. And our hope is to get that money out as quickly as we possibly can. Maybe the last thing I'll say is we know that our immigrants are the backbone of our local economy. And with the decimation of our small business community, I want to mention that the legislature and the governor recently agreed on $500 million of grants to small businesses. And we have, my office, we've been working hard to put the word out in different languages to many of our immigrant small businesses. But know that if you are a struggling small business, you could access anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 in grant money to help your situation. The application for this money is in the next few days. So I'm going to ask my staff to put in the chat some of the information on this so people know. So that's kind of around the world in 3 minutes. But just want to say, appreciate each of your commissioners. Thank you, Madam President, for your indulgence. I want to also just really express my gratitude to Adrienne Pond and her staff for their continued work. And please look to us. I mean, we are your representatives, but in particular, we want to fight for our immigrant community in our city and our state, and you are the voice for that. So please be in touch.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Chu. You were always here with us. You were with us for the close of the census and along all of the journey with the census. We appreciate your support. We appreciate the work that you were doing on behalf of our immigrant communities. Delighted to hear that the fight for healthcare for all continues. It is one of the, as frontline service providers, it is one of the major things that we see for our immigrant communities is healthcare access. And of course, language access is a very big part of what happens through the Commission and the Office of Civic Engagement and Immigrant Affairs. So thank you for remembering all of the welfare needs of our immigrant community, and thank you for your work.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Take care. And I'm delighted to see that Ramona has put in the information in the chat for those of us that have access to that, that Assemblymember Chu has discussed regarding the small business grants. The website is business.ca.gov/OSBA-sign-up, SIGNUP, for anyone who needs to access that information. And again, encourage everybody to share that among your communities and your networks to make sure that our small businesses who have been so particularly hard hit during the COVID pandemic, to make sure that they get access to it. I am now going to move on to our next invited speaker. Delighted to welcome Jennifer LaForce, who is Community Relations Officer, San Francisco District Q42, covering Fresno, Sacramento, San Francisco, and San Jose on behalf of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. Delighted to have Jennifer with us. I am one of those people who hops on the calls periodically to hear what the updates are from USCIS and to get a better understanding of how things are working in that front. So Jennifer, welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Jennifer LaForce. As we've just mentioned, I'm the Community Relations Officer for the San Francisco District Office for U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. I've been with the agency since 2005 and worked as a career civil servant under many administrations, Bush, Obama, and now the Trump administration. In my brief remarks, I'm just going to share with you some of our agency's current operations with a particular emphasis on the last 10 months under COVID. So on March 16th, when a shelter in place was announced for the city of San Francisco, we immediately pivoted at the agency in San Francisco. We canceled thousands of interviews within 2 days and suspended all in-person services. This in-person suspension lasted throughout March, April, and May. My statement that we suspended in-person services, however, is very purposeful language because at no time did our agency actually shut down. We recognize that despite the public health crisis, if our agency shut down, we would only be creating another secondary crisis for many of the immigrants in the San Francisco Bay Area. We acknowledge that completing applications in our pipeline is life-changing for people, allowing folks to change their status from temporary to permanent, from no status to status, from green card to citizenship has far-reaching implications for access to services, including COVID relief benefits. And so for this reason, we are considered a mission-critical operation of the federal government, and our employees have been deemed essential throughout this pandemic. Despite our 3-month pause, we have been continuously able to provide emergency services for individuals who found themselves, especially in COVID-related immigration predicaments. For example, many individuals were simply unable to depart the United States as required by the terms of their visa because of COVID. The agency ramped up processing of requests for extensions of stay and also satisfactory departure. In San Francisco alone, we completed over 800 satisfactory departure requests since COVID has begun. Additionally, our office has been able to prioritize frontline workers, such as those in the medical profession. Just last month, we had a qualified doctor whose adjustment of status interview date was far in the future, and we were able to expedite it so she could enter her residency and become part of the COVID-19 response team locally. Moving forward, I just want to mention that we did reopen in person. We reopened in June, and since then we have naturalized more than 9,000 people, including 2,700 whose ceremonies, oath ceremonies, were abruptly canceled when the shelter in place was announced. We've also conducted more than 10,000 interviews and have about 100 to 150 folks coming in to our offices on any given day. I'm going to wrap up by just mentioning some of our safety protocols, because some of you may be wondering how, during a pandemic, are we remaining open in a responsible manner? So we are following CDC guidelines. The agency has a medical doctor and an industrial hygienist who are providing us guidance on a continuous basis. There have been many, many changes, but let me just share a few that I think will be most important to the folks on this call. The interview, building access, and flexible adoptive processes. In our interviews, we now have plexiglass separating our officers from the applicant. We also no longer have interpreters in these interviews. Rather, they are incorporated by the phone. Representatives are given the option to appear in person, but can appear over the phone as well. As far as building access, folks are not allowed to come into the office more than 15 minutes prior to an appointment. And we are in the process of incorporating temperature checks and a voluntary N95 mask program. And last but not least, as far as processes go, for naturalization interviews, when possible, we are continuing to actually do same-day oaths, so folks are not required to come back to the city or back to their offices, back to our offices, in order to finish their adjudication and become naturalized citizen. Additionally, and again, this is my last point because I know I am over on time, I would mention that we have a no penalty reschedule policy. We do not want people to come in and feel uncomfortable and feel that they are jeopardizing the health or their safety to come to an immigration appointment. This is not a decision we can make for people, but we are trying very hard to get the word out that people can take a pass with absolutely no penalty, and they will be rescheduled in the future. So with that, I will stop and I will open it and hopefully answer any questions that I may be able to answer.
Jennifer, thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the work that you have done to support our immigrant communities. I know that like all of the other agencies and organizations, including all of our own, we all had a very quick pivot to our new world and our new way of doing business. Commissioners, does anyone have any questions for Jennifer?
I do. I couldn't find my unmute button.
Commissioner Guine.
Jennifer, I missed the phrase that you said about how someone can leave without penalty. Can you explain that a little bit? I tried to take note of the phrase that you used. Can you use the phrase again and then let us know what that means?
Sure. What I said was that we have a no penalty reschedule policy, which means if somebody is supposed to come, is called for an interview or called for some appointment at our offices and does not feel comfortable doing so because they believe that it may risk their health, or perhaps that they are in a personal situation where there's somebody at the home that they are being careful that they do not want to expose to the virus. We are trying to make sure all people know that though we are remaining and we're going to continue our business and continue to call people in at a slower rate, we do not want to put anybody in a position where they feel that they are forced to come in despite their comfort level. We will reschedule, no question asked, at a later date. And if they would like that to not be until summer, we can make that accommodation and not reach out to them again until summertime.
Okay, thank you. I think I spoke. I was actually asking about, but that was a great explanation for everyone. I was asking about when someone can leave the country without penalty. You said that we did extensions and that we allowed people to leave without penalizing them. I didn't know what phrase you used, and I didn't know what the procedure for that was. So if someone is either on a B2 or
okay, yeah.
On time. Yes.
Yeah. So I think what I was referring to there was that we had emergency situations that arose because of the COVID pandemic. And a lot of times folks who were trying to honor the terms of their visa or were part of the visa waiver program where you are not allowed to stay after 90 days, there was their people were worried that they were going to in fact violate the terms of whatever their visa stated, and this could cause a penalty for them being able to return to the country in the future. And what I was sharing was that we process a lot of extension of stays, allowing people to have some discretion to basically remain in the country longer without being in violation of their visa. And also the same discretion for folks who are part of the visa waiver program who also could not get on a plane because there simply wasn't planes returning to a country.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Great questions there, Commissioner Guine. Thank you for that. Commissioners, anyone else have a question for Jennifer? Commissioner Wong, I see that you're speaking. You're still muted.
Yes.
There we go. Yes, we've got you.
Not a question, but just a comment. I wanted to commend Jennifer and her staff for the work that they're doing. It's a very difficult time, and I want to commend them for their courage in continuing to provide this public service for our communities who are so dependent on your assistance.
Thank you very much.
Agreed. Thank you, Commissioner Wong. And one final question, if there might be one. And hearing none, Jennifer, thank you again for joining us. To second what Commissioner Wong said, I think we all are aware of members of our communities who have found themselves in extenuating circumstances due to COVID-19, be it for travel or for a plethora of other items. And I know that all of your colleagues have been there to help and support in any way that they can. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And if anybody has any follow-up questions they would like to ask me offline, feel free to contact me at jennifer.m as in Mary.laforce at uscis.dhs.gov.
Excellent. Thank you,
I
Jennifer.
can put that in the chat.
Actually, yeah, that would be great. Perfect. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm going to move us on to our next speaker, who again has 5 minutes to present to us. And that is our wonderful friend, Sally Kanoshita, who's Deputy Director of the Immigrant Legal Resource Centre. Sally, you are always with us. You are always educating us and educating the community. So welcome. And I believe you're going to bring to us a policy overview of the new administration. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year, commissioners, OSEA staff, and my nonprofit colleagues. It's always a pleasure to be with you, so thank you so much for having me. For those of you who don't know, the Immigrant Legal Resource Center is a nonprofit based here in San Francisco, and I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes providing a summary of what we think we might be able to expect under the Biden administration when it comes to immigration. And what I'll share this evening is based on the Biden immigration platform that was shared by his campaign on his website, statements made by Joe Biden in media interviews, and statements that were made on the campaign trail. So I mentioned that just to add a grain of salt in there, that there has been a lot of talk about immigration in the context of the Biden administration, but of course, what that looks like when Biden is in office is going to depend on a lot of different things. And of course, he is becoming president at really unprecedented times with a lot of other challenges to the economy with a worldwide pandemic, et cetera. So it's hard to know where the priorities will lie. Nonetheless, I'll share with you what we have heard. And the Biden administration has talked about immigration in terms of a day one plan, a first 100 days plan, and then 4 pillars or principles moving forward. Some of this sounds like platitudes, again, my apologies, but really Biden has said that he is prepared on day one of his administration, which is January 20th, to deliver leadership and solutions needed to address the humanitarian crisis at our border created by the Trump administration, to bring our nation together, to reassert core values and reform our immigration system. What does that mean? As recently, actually, as last Friday at a news conference, President-elect Joe Biden said that he'll introduce immigration legislation immediately after taking office this month, and that he'll have the Justice Department investigate the Trump administration's separation of migrant children from their parents. So those are 2 of what we hear repeatedly as priorities. What that legislation looks like is he has not provided any details, but in a moment I'll get into some possibilities. So the first 100-day plan is actually fairly ambitious in terms of how it's been articulated. Among the things that Biden has talked about doing are rescinding the ban on travel from a dozen mostly majority Muslim countries, often called the Muslim ban or the travel ban. He has at times talked about implementing a 100-day freeze on deportations, while they look at ways to deprioritize the removal of undocumented people who had become really priorities under the Trump administration, who had expanded priorities to be really any undocumented immigrant. He's also talked about reversing harmful asylum policies proposed under President Trump, ending prolonged immigration detention, reversing the new public charge rule that we've talked a lot about. He's talked about ending funding for the border wall that's been channeled through the Department of Defense. So unlikely to take down the 400 or so miles of wall that have been created under the Trump administration, but would cease continuing funding for that wall. He's talked about reinstating DACA immediately, and also has talked about, quote unquote, exploring all legal options to protect families from separation. So we don't know if that means DAPA or some other program, but it's something that has been articulated repeatedly. when it comes to Dreamers, he's also talked about expanding eligibility for federal student aid, such as loans and Pell Grants for Dreamers and undocumented students. He's talked about reviewing the temporary protected status program and possibly offering TPS holders a path to citizenship through legislative immigration reform. There have been rumors of adding other countries to TPS, such as Venezuela. There's been some advocacy to add Mexico to the TPS program. That's been tried before unsuccessfully, so could probably face some challenges, but has been discussed. There's also been talk from the Biden administration about withdrawing from agreements that Trump entered into with Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador that permitted the United States to shift asylum seekers to those countries. So that really required people to wait outside the United States while they sought asylum in our country. After the first 100 days, there are 4 pillars of the first year that the Biden administration says that they would prioritize. And they include, first, legislative immigration reform. Second, something called strengthening communities. Third, steps to secure the border in a sensible manner. And fourth, focusing on the causes of migration in Central America. What could be done under a legislative solution? That seems a little bit more feasible now that there are 50 Democrats in the Senate. However, it's likely that a legislative solution would need 60 senators. So would have to get some Republicans to come over to the side of the Democrats. But some of the possibilities are a roadmap to citizenship for the undocumented 11 million people we have in the country, or possibly a smaller bill that could help temporary workers in certain industries, such as possibly essential workers, maybe a temporary visa program for high-skilled workers, maybe a bill for agricultural workers, maybe a bill that's like the DREAM Act. So those are some of the possibilities. I only have a few seconds left, so I just want to mention, notably, the Biden administration does not side with some of the more progressive members of the Democratic Party who are, for example, calling for the abolition of ICE and or ending all immigration detention. He has talked about ending for-profit detention, but not for the abolishment of ICE. And just in the interest of time, I will end there. I can take questions in the chat or now, or I'm happy to stay on for questions later.
Thank you, Sally. I think we might do a few questions from commissioners at this juncture, if that's okay, and then we're going to be moving into our presentations from our CBO partners. So, commissioners, do we have any questions for Sally at this point? Seeing Commissioner Rahimi first, and then Commissioner Radwan.
Sally, thank you very much for the time you took to speak today. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all your hard work throughout this difficult time. If the commission were to amplify priorities for the Biden administration, what would you recommend based on your experience, the work that you're seeing on the front lines? What would be some of the priorities that the commission should amplify from the platform that we have?
Thanks so much for asking that question. The ILRC where I work actually has created a blueprint for the Biden administration that, just to shorthand this conversation, I can link to in the chat later so people can see what we are urging the Biden administration to focus on, which includes, in shorthand, ending immigration arrests, detention, and deportation, restoring immigration relief such as DACA and TPS, and ending the public charge rule, but also really kind of more generally asking the Biden administration to be bold, given the opportunity that we have now and how much we see the need and the demand, and also to be more bold than Biden had been under the Obama administration, where I think we all know a record number of people were deported, and there was a lot of actual we had good things such as DACA, but we also had put in place a structure for deportation and detention that has really led to the separation of all the families that that Trump was able to implement. So I will link to that after my presentation, so you can see more detail.
That'd be great. We can definitely use it as a resource. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Rahimi. Commissioner Radwan.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Sally, for the presentation. And I'm not sure if I heard you mention this, but I've seen some of your presentations in the past, and one of the things that came into my mind was around the increase in the fees for some of the naturalization processes. And I'm just wondering if there was anything based on your research. I know they had a little blurb on the Joe Biden website, but was there anything else that was more concrete about lowering those fees or rolling back those ridiculous fees?
I'm so glad you asked, because there actually was an update just within the last few days. What the commissioner is referring to was an attempt by the Trump administration to increase filing fees, including for naturalization and other applications, as well as to eliminate the ability to get a filing fee waiver for most applicants. That actually had been pending through litigation, and we just found out last week that the government dropped its appeal. So their attempts to raise these fees and get rid of filing fees were enjoined by the federal courts. The government had the opportunity to appeal, and just last week dropped their appeal. So it's enjoined indefinitely. And then a lot of this legislation, when the Biden administration comes in, they could potentially stop defending the Trump policies under the, with the new administration, and even settle those cases and agree with some of the courts that some of them were illegal. So thank you. That gives me the opportunity to update you all that for now, we don't think those filing fee increases are going to come into effect.
Great. Very glad to hear that. Vice Chair Paz.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. Thank you, Sally, again for the presentation. Sally, as you know, one of the things that I worry about is that the Obama administration, when they inherited a very tough sort of first term with the advent of a recession and so forth, the opportunity for comprehensive immigration reform just sort of fell by the way back. Now we have another similar situation with the incoming Biden administration. So following up on Commissioner Rahimi's sort of comments about how can we amplify, how can we ensure that this won't happen again? Is there anything we can do on our end, joining with other partners to ensure that comprehensive immigration reform stay on the table and become part of the priority in the first year, so we don't lose that opportunity again?
Yeah, I mean, I think something that all immigrant advocates and immigrant rights organizations have really learned is that partnering with centering and partnering with directly impacted communities is a really effective strategy for putting pressure on our leadership, and also ensuring that we have policies that really speak to the needs of the community, and knowing where those compromises that may be required are acceptable and which ones really are not. I think we're hearing a lot from the immigrant community, again, as I said before, that we need to be bold and not start from a position of compromise that pushes us back further, as well as really looks to ways that we can address other issues that are impacting our communities and the broader community, such as issues of racial justice and economic justice. So, I think we have opportunities in that many here have contacts with, for example, our incoming senator, as well as with our outgoing Senator Kamala Harris, who's going to be in the administration. There are concerns in the immigrant community that a lot of who Joe Biden is bringing into his cabinet are really centrists that are part of the Obama administration. And so they really, the good thing is they know the system well, but they may need to be pushed to be bolder. They have the tools, but they need to kind of have the courage to adopt the values that we would like to see reflected in the policies that they put forth.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Radwan. Do we have a final question for Sally before we move on to our CBOs? Commissioner Rahimi, go on. I'll let you in again.
Assuming nobody else wants to ask a question. A lot of us have talked about abolishing ICE as a priority. I'm one of those folks. There's folks on the commission that also advocate for the same. From your perspective, on the ground, on the front lines, how do you look at that issue, and how we should advocate for it?
Yeah, I mean, to be very honest, it's a difficult topic because I think it means different things to different people, and for folks who are not steeped in the conversation, it's very either confusing or threatening, and so I think what we have found has been helpful, just even for us internally as an organization, is to have the conversation. What does it mean? Is it a concept? Is it an ambition? Or is it an actual policy proposal? Similar to the defund the police conversation. And to really understand, or to at least if you're making a decision or position on it, that you have a shared understanding of what that actually means. And again, it's an issue where we've really looked to the community, not just the immigrant community broadly speaking, for whom, if they're not part of the conversation, it seems very confusing and possibly scary, but really by the community, I mean those who are working on these issues, to really understand what do they mean when they say abolish ICE, and why would they adopt that kind of position or be promoting it among other community members. For a lot of people, it just started out as a hashtag and they did not know. And so the conversation has to go beyond that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Rahimi. Thank you, Sally, for your presentation and for always having just the best advice that you can share with us. On behalf of the Commission, I think that we look forward to working with you and working with all of our CBOs to figure out how we can best support. Of course, our role is to advise the mayor and to advise the Board of Supervisors on how we think they can best move forward on behalf of our immigrants and how they can best make that representation on the national level. With the mayor being the spokesperson for the city in terms of all things policy suggestions. So we look forward to being able to be that strong voice to both the Board of Supervisors and to the mayor, and we really, really appreciate all of the information that you bring to us so that we can make the best decisions that we can. We look forward to standing with you and to being bold and encouraging others to be bold. Because as you laid out, we have a huge opportunity at the moment. Last week's Georgia win certainly shifted things in the hearts of all of us, and we hope in the minds of many on Capitol Hill. So we look forward to being part of supporting all of our partners as we take action on January 20th and beyond. So thank you, Sally. Okay, we are at this juncture going to move to our community-based organizations, those wonderful organizations who are out on the coalface every day, helping and supporting our immigrants, helping and supporting all of our San Francisco residents, but with a particular focus on our immigrant community, be they documented or be they undocumented. They work long hours, they work hard, they do phenomenal and tremendous work, and we're so delighted that you are all with us this evening. So, CBO partners, this evening you will have 3 minutes to give remarks, and you will be notified in the chat by Jamie Richardson. Good evening, Jamie. Thank you for being with us. When you get to the 1 minute warning point, and again when your time is up. If you are still mid-flight, post your 3 minute timeline, I will have to ask you to curtail your comments because we have 15 organizations presenting to us this evening. And then we do want to open to members of the public for comment post that. So those are the guidelines for this evening. And we have put the organizations in alphabetical order. That is the order in which I shall be calling you. And we're going to start this evening with the African Advocacy Network. And we're joined by Adubo Traore, who is the Executive Director. Adubo, welcome. We are delighted to have you. Thank you for being the first speaker to kick off our CBO section this evening. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, and Happy New Year to everybody. You know, I'm so happy to be the first one to speak because whatever I cannot cover, I can count on my colleagues, you know, to go over those things. Yeah, speaking about immigration, when we heard that, you know, Joe Biden was elected, it was a big sigh in all our communities, big sigh after 4 years of being demonized or being ostracized or being scapegoating. And so we kind of really happy, but at the same time, you know, sitting back and then you start thinking, yeah, not everything is going to come handy because, you know, these 4 years, you know, really kind of sharpened, you know, in our community, the awareness of the fact that, you know, we need to be better organized, that we need to be together, that we need to have some leadership, either from our elected officials or even, you know, among ourselves, you know, as community-based organizations. And that's why, you know, I'm really happy to be here and call out, not just feeling as a member of the whole family, but also, you know, seeing this opportunity, you know, to call out, you know, to all of us that, you know, this is time for solidarity. Nothing is going to come handy, right? Our big dream is to have a comprehensive immigration reform. Is it going to happen? And when Sister Sally was speaking, I was thinking that she would say, hey, you know what, TPS and DACA would be gone, that, you know, there's going to be, you know, a pathway to citizenship. But, you know, we're not there yet. So that means that, you know, we're going to keep struggling. We're going to keep fighting, and we need more solidarity. And at the same time, you know, there's a need, you know, really to help emerging communities, you know, particularly those who have been here, you know, are long established, you know, to share your experience. And so that, you know, we can be able, you know, to join our forces and because, you know, stronger together, and I'm sure we can win. Now, speaking briefly about COVID-19, you know, it's been a unique experience, you know, for most of us. You know, I mean, being confronted with such a pandemic, we don't know where it's from, and we don't know what to do about it. And now, you know, we're hearing about a vaccine. It's kind of weird because yesterday I was sitting and thinking about the vaccine, and I realized that I'm from a country where more than 90% of the children are vaccinated, you know, against tuberculosis. And I was thinking about how it all started, how are people reacted, you know, when they first told me about this vaccine. And I was trying really, you know, to say, will the same thing happen? But, you know, I can tell that, you know, more than 50 years after, you know, every single child, you know, born in a hospital in my country is vaccinated against tuberculosis. So, and I believe that, you know, for us, you know, to accept that, you know, we're going to have to do a lot of work of education. We're going to have to work about, you know, making all these new means, you know, accessible to everybody. And this is where we talk about equity. Equity is an essential thing. So we're going to have to think more and more equity in the immigrant community. We know that we've been more affected by COVID-19 than any other group of people because our working conditions, because our living condition, overcrowding houses and all those things. And all this, you know, speaks, you know, to equity. So I would like to stop here and really express, you know, my thought of hope, you know, hope that, you know, we're going to be stronger together, hope that, you know, we're going to be supportive to each other, and that, you know, nothing's going to come handy. We're going to need to keep fighting, even if it's not, you know, against an enemy like it was last year, but even, you know, with our allies, you know, we got to fight, and so that, you know, we can reach the same objectives. Thank you.
I do both. Thank you. And thank you for the call to action for all of us, as we do need to remember that we need to stand together and stand shoulder to shoulder. And yes, absolutely, equity. As we have had a number of conversations and continue to work. We have developed a racial equity working group within the Commission that focuses on equity issues for our community here in San Francisco. So we look forward to continuing to make sure that the immigrant, all of our immigrant issues are also, that lens is very firmly focused on our immigrant issues. So thank you for being with us this evening. Our next speaker is from the Arab Resource and Organizing Center, AROC. I'd like to welcome Leila Taha, who is an immigration attorney. Leila, I saw you there a minute ago. There you are. And the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. I just want to echo everything that's been said before me. I think just from the past couple of years, I think two of the primary issues that we've been seeing that have been impacting our client base is the public charge issues and the travel ban issues, and in a lot of more cases than not, these policies intersect in more ways than one in terms of the impact it has on the community, the ableist, classist type of biases it has against our community. So we're really hoping that at bare minimum, the public charge and travel ban issues are addressed by the administration. And I mean, we also, I think, implore the administration to really think about a lot of these implicit biases that exist, that have predated this Trump administration, that have in more ways than not given way to these more blanket structural problems that we are facing today. So really thinking about, like, I really commend you guys for bringing up this abolish ICE issue and the fact that it's based on implicit biases regarding issues of anti-Blackness, anti-Brownness, what constitutes criminality, immigration as a form of like criminalization. So immigration enforcement as a form of criminalization. So I really think that it is an important way to think about these things. I think something else that comes up just thinking about, I know in the past week we've had a lot of these discussions regarding domestic terrorism, and just based on coming from what our community sees, we usually see what happens more often than not. These laws tend to target disproportionately, not the people that it intends to impact, but in fact, the working class Black and Brown Muslim immigrants. So I think that is something we should definitely be mindful of. I mean, for example, today, the FTO designated the Houthis in Yemen as a foreign terrorist organization, which in theory is great, right? We don't want war criminals, we don't want to be supporting acts of terror, but in the same vein, it is going to be impacting our client base, because our client base, the way material law stands as of right now, it is going to impact people fleeing war and tragedy in Yemen. So I really just like encourage you guys to think about those types of implicit things that then kind of are things that we have to structurally deal with down the line. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Leila. Thank you very much for your presentation. Our next invited speaker, representing Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Asian Law Caucus, and Free San Francisco, is Sarah Lee. Sarah, welcome. Do we have, oh, there you are. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, and it's good to hear from AROC and AAN. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Sarah Lee, I'm advocate at Asian Law Caucus, and also a member of the Free SF Coalition, and I'm going to be speaking on behalf of Free SF today. Folks may know that over a decade, Free SF has advocated for pro-immigrant policies in San Francisco, and our coalition has led efforts to defend due process for youth ordinance, the due process for all ordinance, and recently the update to the sanctuary ordinance. So that's a little bit of a history for Free SF. Our current campaign focuses on the U.S. Attorney David Anderson and the City Attorney Dennis Herrera's enforcement efforts that use failed tactics to arrest, detain, and criminalize our Honduran transitional age youth here in San Francisco for what should be actually a robust public health response. And social workers in Free SF have noted that many of the people targeted were unaccompanied minors who fled violence and poverty in Hondurans, and they were often trafficked and forced to sell drugs in exchange for basic needs such as housing. And so rather than providing essential services to assist these trafficking victims, we have a Trump-appointed U.S. attorney who has been prosecuting immigrants for drug sales in the Tenderloin under harsh federal charges. And he does this through this deceptive program called the Federal Initiative for the Tenderloin. I want to note here that the SF Police Department has repeatedly boasted about their collaboration with the U.S. Attorney, arresting immigrants and turning them over to the federal government for prosecution. And what SFPD has not been transparent about is that these community members are also subject to deportation after they've been funneled into federal custody, which undercuts our sanctuary ordinance. SFPD's participation with the U.S. Attorney's mass operation, for example, in August 2019, did not reduce drug sales and use in the city. Instead, it actually created a much more chaotic and dangerous drug market. And Free SF strongly believes that SFPD should cut its ties with the U.S. Attorney. A background on the city attorney's efforts. Some of you may know that last September, Herrera filed 28 civil injunctions on majority Honduran immigrants that excluded them from the Tenderloin in a supposed effort to stop drug dealing. Unfortunately, the injunctions won't do anything to heal the Tenderloin community or improve conditions for the residents, because these injunctions are a continuation of ineffective policies that target our Black and Brown communities and waste resources that could really be better used for housing and culturally accessible mental health services and community groups doing harm reduction. Free SF joins Tenderloin organizations urging the city attorney here to drop these injunctions. And so finally, I would say, we hope that the IRC would lift up Free SF's recommendations for SFPD to stop working with the U.S. attorney and for the city attorney to drop the civil injunctions and to provide really needed services for victims of trafficking and people suffering from drug addiction. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. Do you have something in writing that you can submit to the Commission, just so that we have all of the information that you shared with us this evening?
Yes, definitely. We can follow up.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, our next organization is Asian Pacific Islander Outreach. I will get this right eventually. Asian Pacific Islander Legal Outreach, APILO, and SF Pathways to Citizenship Initiative. It's Vicky Hartanto, immigration attorney. Vicky, welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Vicky Hartanto. I'm the supervising attorney for the Immigration Project at API Legal Outreach. We are a social justice legal organization focused on providing culturally competent and linguistically appropriate legal services for the API and Latinx communities in the Bay Area. We do serve the most marginalized and vulnerable segments of the community in the areas of immigration, anti-human trafficking, housing, domestic violence, and elder abuse. We are also a member of SFPCI, the San Francisco Pathways to Citizenship Initiative. SFPCI assists legal permanent residents who seek to become US citizens. Since its inception, SFPCI has assisted one-on-one almost 15,000 immigrants and organized countless large group naturalization workshops to serve thousands more, supporting immigrants who are low income, elderly, and who face language and cultural barriers to legal services. I know Annie Chung, who is speaking later, will speak more about SFPCI's good work. Through API Legal Outreach's work representing immigrants in all stages of the immigration process, from deportation proceedings to naturalization, we see every day the impact of the Trump administration's policies on our clients. They live with constant insecurity about their legal status and endure attack after attack on their basic rights. They have also been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, as you know. Many of our clients are essential workers, and many have lost their jobs and are struggling just to survive. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has tried on multiple fronts to destroy our immigration and asylum system as we know it. We are hopeful that the new administration will improve things, but we know it will not happen overnight or in all areas of immigration. So during this difficult time, it's especially important to keep naturalization and other legal services affordable and accessible. At this moment, we are facing potential cuts to our funding while we are all working longer hours than ever before. So we urge the Commission to advocate for preserving our local funding, and thank you sincerely for your commitment to immigrants' rights and human rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vicky, and along with all of the organizations that are with us this evening, thank you for the work that you do for your community. Okay, our next community-based organization is Black Alliance for Just Immigration, BAJI. We have two speakers. We are joined by Aaron Sorry, Aaron, I'm not going to do a good job. You're going to have to do your last name for me.
No worries. Okuba Mikael. Okuba Michael.
Okuba Mikael. I like it.
Yeah.
Okuba Mikael. Okay, right. I'll work on that for the next meeting. Okay. And Dr. Thaddeus Asefa. So Aaron is a community educator and Dr. Asefa is Los Angeles Clinic Coordinator. Welcome to you both. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and good evening, the commissioners. Thank you. And I'm glad that I am part of this meeting today. I work for BAJI. BAJI is a national organization. Our headquarters is in Brooklyn, New York, but we work throughout the country. And our main job or mission is to educate and engage African American and also Black immigrant communities, mostly from Africa and the Caribbean, as well as from South America. So our main task in the last actually 4 years was mainly to join all those forces that support immigration and immigrants cause, and also helping those organizations in preparing legal memos. And also we take active legal representation for those of people who came to the US seeking asylum. And we work mostly with Black folks from around the world who came to the US after fleeing from their country for fear of persecutions. It's obvious for all of you that there is this anti-Black policies, and it's actually US as a country that is known in its history for institutionalizing this anti-Black policies. So it's been also, I mean, extremely challenging for the Black immigrants here in the US once they arrive, especially as asylum seekers, to access legal services and also legal representation, especially in detention camps. We have, as in Baji, we have registered a number of unfair and also unreasonable solitary confinements that specifically targets Black immigrants in the detention facilities. And at the same time, after this COVID, things happened or occurred, there is this completely brushing of every asylum seeker from entering to the US, especially those Black immigrants or asylum seekers who are mostly crossing countries in the South America. They usually arrived completely traumatized and re-traumatized, so it hasn't been easy for them to get proper representations. And also there is a language barrier or language constraints for many of the folks, because those language services that they usually ask is for language that they speak from their home country, but unfortunately it's not always available. So this is a challenge that we have, and I thank you very much. I appreciate for giving this space. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Sorry, my mouse was not cooperating as I tried to unmute. Thank you for your comments this evening. And I think, you know, given the conversations that have happened in this country, we certainly know that there is a lens on the additional difficulties that our immigrants of colour and our BIPOC communities face. And of course, we know that carries over into the immigration realm as well. So thank you for your testimony this evening. Our next, thank you, Melissa, she has put the list of organizations in the chat so that everybody knows the order in which we're coming to you. Our next speaker is, and as with all of our speakers this evening, another longtime friend of the Commission from Central American Resource Center, Caresan, Larissa Dugan-Quadra. Welcome, Larissa. Delighted to have you with us. And the floor is now yours.
Thank you, and good evening, members of the Immigrant Rights Commission, city representatives, our community-based partners, and of course, our community members participating in this important meeting tonight. My name is Larissa Dugan-Quadra. I'm the Executive Director of the Central American Resource Center of Northern California, Caresan SF, which was born of the San Francisco Sanctuary Movement, and we are the oldest Central American organization in the Bay Area, focused on delivering essential social services and full-scope immigration legal services. We do advocacy for immigrant integration and justice, for restorative justice for juveniles, and Latino and immigrant health. Our third pillar of work is transnational advocacy along the Mesoamerican migration corridor of Central America and Mexico, to achieve increased consular services and protections for migrants en route at country of destination and upon forced return, deportation to countries of origin. As advocates, we can't help but to experience a highly cautious sense of optimism with the Biden-Harris administration, given recent history with when President Obama and Democrats made promises about comprehensive immigration reform. And despite having control of all three, well, the executive, the House, and the Senate, did not pass a single policy in favor of migrants. Only after the Democrats lost control of the Senate and under great pressure from the Dreamers and immigrant rights organizations such as Carecen and other local SF orgs and national organizations did Obama use his executive power to establish the DACA program. We have not forgotten. During these past 4 years of advocacy and resistance against the human rights violations by the current administration, we have been affirmed that the change we seek starts at home, in neighborhoods, and in our cities. This week, the Global Forum on Migration and Development is taking place virtually, and civil society representatives from around the globe, of which Carecen is proud to be one of, are working on identifying strategies and recommendations on policies to present to more than 140 nations that adopted the non-binding Global Compact on Migration in December of 2018 at the Marrakesh Global Forum on Migration and Development. Notably, the US under Trump withdrew from the compact negotiations and actively pressured nations not to adopt the compact. We should feel proud that San Francisco and Bay Area cities are among the few cities in the global conversation that have clear and concrete examples of policies that support immigrant integration and justice. We're not the only city or nation, but we are among the few. I can't help but to just highlight a few of those examples: our local sanctuary ordinance, language access ordinance, now the representation of migrants in commissions, culturally and linguistically accessible COVID testing sites, family economic relief, of which we need more for immigrants excluded from the federal relief bills. And yet locally, we know that our community has been most impacted by housing, rental, housing, food, and economic insecurity. We need more investments from our city and migrants. We have, as a city, funded legal defense to advance due process in SF Immigration Court through SF ILDC Collaborative, the Public Defenders Immigration Unit, SF Island, Rapid Response, Immigrant Rights Commission, and the list goes on and on and on. And we know that these policies work not only for immigrants, but for our city overall by increasing public safety, advancing due process, and keeping families together. The San Francisco Immigrant Legal Defense Collaborative, San Francisco Immigrant Legal Education Network, and the San Francisco Rapid Response Network are three core collaboratives. We're not the only ones doing the work, but we are a collaborative of 23 organizations represented citywide. Island, San Francisco Immigrant Legal Education, just to show some of the impact of this work and these investments over the past, well, since 2006. Island alone has served or reached more than 16,000 people with in-depth legal consultations, has assisted almost 7,000 people in completing legal forms and applications, provided almost 2,000 full scope legal representation, and referred almost 4,000 community members to education, legal, and social services. And beyond that, we have reached almost 20,000 immigrants in our city to educate them about their rights and due process. The San Francisco Immigrant Legal Defense Collaborative has provided since 2015 full scope legal representation before immigration court to more than 1,300 individuals. And we represent individuals from 34 different countries. I want to take this moment to highlight that while Trump may want to make Latinos the poster child of immigration, we know that migrants come from all corners of the globe. And we can see that tonight in the representation of our commission in San Francisco that we're very proud of. And we also can see that through the partners and the allies who are in this call presenting tonight. San Francisco Rapid Response Network has responded to more than 6,000 hotline calls, facilitated 300 Know Your Rights workshops, conducted more than 300, well, almost 400 follow-ups sessions with community members impacted by ICE enforcement, verified the instances of 30 ICE activities. Well, those are ones that we were able to verify, and have co-organized 5 public campaigns for detained San Francisco residents. Carecen and members of the San Francisco Latinx community presented a list of demands to Speaker Nancy Pelosi, which include the immediate use of executive action within the first 100 days, as some of our colleagues have spoken tonight about, as well as congressional legislation to protect and integrate migrants into the U.S. social, cultural, civic, and economic tapestry. We, the Latinx community, Central Americans, demand One, an immediate end to separation of children at the border and to mitigate the harm caused by the zero tolerance policy, which is a violation of human rights, but also violates the Convention on the Right of the Child. Two, we want an end to the monetization and criminalization of human mobility through border militarization and externalization, private detention, and documented violations of human rights. We want an immediate stop to the cancellation of the TPS, DACA, and deferred enforced departure programs. We want the new elected federal government to secure a legislative path to permanency and work on authorization documents for all migrants without exclusion. We want inclusion of migrants in future federal relief related to COVID's health pandemic, as we know that no public health strategy can work if it excludes any one member of our society. Finally, we want an end to the criminalization of migrants and to advance due process in U.S. Immigration Court by legislating to move immigration judges out of the U.S. Department of Justice and into civil courts. Furthermore, we want a divestment from border militarization, an investment in community development initiatives in Central America and in countries where people are forced to leave due to lack of opportunity and other structural causes. We look forward to working with the Commission, with all the partners represented in this call. And I just want to highlight once again that San Francisco is a leader. We're a leader locally, we're a leader in the nation, and the world is actually looking at us. And this feels really good when they say US, and then we say, hey, but here's California, here's San Francisco. So we have a lot to be proud of. Nonetheless, we need to expand the programs and the successes that we have achieved because the need is great. And we all know that the COVID statistics in our city show us that migrants have been the most impacted. So we need to expand the family relief funds. We need to make sure that these investments are sustained and that we move forward together. Thank you.
Larissa, thank you so much. You got a little bit more time because that was such a comprehensive overview.
I wrote it down. I don't do that usually, so thank you for the extra time.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for reminding us of all of the phenomenal work that is being done. Everything. I couldn't agree with you more. San Francisco really is a poster child for doing the right thing by our immigrant communities. And thank you for reminding us of that. Sometimes as we try to look forward and look to see what can we do next, we sometimes forget to look back and look at what it is that we have done well in the past. I would like to ask you if we could please have you submit your presentation in writing to capture and remind us all of the.
And we will also submit the letter that we presented to Speaker Pelosi.
Yes, please. Please, and that list that you gave us at the end of the asks that you have of this administration, we would like to just take that in and look at it a little bit more and perhaps come back to you with some further questions about it. So thank you. Commissioners, if any of you have questions for any of our speakers who have spoken thus far, can I please ask you to put them into the chat, and then I may call on Vice Chair Paz, actually, if it's okay with you, Vice Chair, and that when we come to the end of our next speaker, if there are questions for a prior speaker, that I would have you pull out those questions and ask them on behalf of our other commissioners.
Will do, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Vice Chair. Okay. Right, I am going to move something a little bit out of order because we have somebody who is having a little 3-year-old getting dropped off at 7. So in order to give Mom time to be ready for her 3-year-old to arrive, I would like to move and asking the indulgence of the other speakers who were invited, I would like to move Mujeres Unidas de Activas up along the list so that we can let Lourdes out at 7. So welcoming Lourdes Martinez, Political Director, with Moa bringing her to the front. Lourdes, are you ready? Do I see you? I'm trying to see you. There's a lot of people in front of me right now. But the floor is yours if you are ready. Do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself? And Lourdes, are you okay to unmute yourself? I see you, but you are still muted. Or is there somebody on the back end that can assist with the unmuting?
I tried, but it's not working. I'm sorry, Lourdes.
It's not working.
You might have to hang up and try again.
Okay, she was, can we try again? She was accidentally logged off. So yes, Lourdes, please go ahead and unmute your mic, or Melissa, would you see if you could provide assistance?
I'm unable to unmute her, unfortunately. I'm not sure why.
Okay. Lourdes, can we get you to try there again? Okay. You're fine. Apologies on Lourdes' behalf as she tries to figure this out.
If I may, through the chair, was she going to present via our interpreter, or was she going to present directly? I was just curious.
I am not sure. This is coming to me in the chat. So I am not sure. And Lourdes, if you are able to let me know that.
She's going to present in English. Yeah, directly.
Directly. Okay, perfect. Okay, if it's okay, I think Lourdes says logged out to log back in again. Okay, and I think you are back in again.
Hi.
Excellent. Yes, I have you now. Welcome, Lourdes. Okay, the floor is yours. Welcoming you back.
I'm sorry, everybody. I couldn't believe the moment that I was finally ready to join you all. I got locked out, but it's very lovely to be here, and thank you so much to the invitation for MUA. Just to give you a little introduction for those of you who are not as familiar with Mujeres Unidas y Activas, we are an organization of Latina immigrant women in the Bay Area with offices in San Francisco, the East Bay, Oakland, as well as the South Alameda County. And during this year, the year of COVID-19, we quickly had to scramble to strengthen our digital organizing capacity to reach people via texting, Facebook, social media. And we launched our own relief fund and offered small grants to over 500 women who are members of our community, women who had access to our services. We also offered support for them to access other relief funds, and we learned a little bit more than we used to know about benefits for regarding housing, of course, medical care needs, and benefits for unemployment. So all of these presented huge barriers for our community, which is largely domestic workers and other service sector workers, undocumented immigrants, barred from things as that you all know, the federal stimulus checks, unemployment benefits, and economic assistance such as earned income tax credit. I was really happy to hear Assemblymember Chu earlier, because I actually didn't know that this year some of our undocumented community is going to be able to apply for the earned income tax credit at the state level. That is really great news. But of course, they're still barred from the federal benefit. And these are really important because our community, and I'm going to share with you a video that I think is just really wonderful and will really hit it home. Recorded by a group of our members talking about the impact of this pandemic on them. And it's clear that the main impact, other than the medical crisis, some of our members were impacted by the illness. They ended up in the hospital, or their family members did. But right next to that has been the economic impact. One of our members who speaks in this video that I'm going to share with you, I mean, I don't have time to play it, but I'll share it in the chat. They lost their main source of income because of illness and lack of protection, such as sick leave and such. And then they are facing bills such as ambulance bill of $3,000 and upwards. Domestic workers don't have benefits to protect them during this time of loss of income. Employers simply dismiss them, say don't show up, or other employers who need them because they're essential workers, such as they care for elderly members of the family, people with incapacity, disabilities, childcare workers. On the other hand, those of them who are like essential workers, they have not been provided the adequate protections or guarantees of a safe and healthy environment. So I wanted to share with you that our priority last year and into this year are two local campaigns, or one local campaign in San Francisco to provide sick leave and paid time off to domestic workers in the city of San Francisco. Hillary Ronan, Supervisor Ronan was the supervisor to introduce it, but we've gotten a lot of support and we hope that this will pass in the coming months. And at the state level, unfortunately, we lost the Fight for Health and Safety for All Workers Act. Governor Newsom signed, he basically vetoed what had passed both the Assembly and the Senate. And it was very unfortunate because it showed really a lack of understanding of domestic work as work and domestic workers as workers, especially from a state government that had really been talking a lot about recognizing workers and COVID relief for workers. It really failed to include domestic workers and to really legitimize what they do, especially those of them who, as I was saying, are essential workers and have been working front lines. And we have heard of people going to work and then getting COVID-19 at work. And there is nothing that obligates their employers. So I think that those are two priorities here in California and more in San Francisco that I wanted to let you know about. Otherwise, at the federal level, of course, as well as at the state level, healthcare for all is really important to our community. And so we tried as best we could to be part of that here in California. At the federal level, this is part of immigration reform because any issue is really an immigrant rights issue. It's labor rights, it's right to healthcare, all of these things, right to a college education and financial aid. These are all things that impact undocumented and mixed status families differently. So we're really concerned about seeing the Biden administration come through during the first 100 days, that promise of introducing a bill that could open up the pathway to citizenship to so many. And really, as we were talking in this OSEA meeting in December, thinking about what messages would we like to give from San Francisco to the federal government, to the Democratic Party, to the Biden administration and those allies that Sally Kinoshita was talking about. And I think from us, a community like MUA, we organized over 200 phone banks to get out the Latino vote. And I think many of you have probably heard the great success story of this election was that Latinos went out to vote. I think the first election of Obama had less than 9 million Latinos voting, something like that. And this past election had over 23 million Latino voters. So our communities are getting engaged. Many of our community, which is undocumented and does not have the right to vote, was nevertheless making those phone calls and understanding their role of leadership in getting out the vote and influencing the election. So civic engagement is really a key for us in all of the advocacy that we do. And that's just something I wanted to highlight, because it is really important for us to continue to remind our public officials how important our communities are, even those that are without access to the vote, to consider them in policy. And that's all that I had to share with you today. I don't know if there are any questions or anything that would be helpful. Sorry, the one last thing I wanted to mention, Celine, just because this is more of a question, but like a point of discussion for us to think about is how to have advocacy strategies that leverage the power that some of us have in these groups, especially our public officials, so that community members like the members of my organization can reach high levels of power. Because that really is one of our main questions as we face this new possibility of immigration reform is, how do we get our members' voices? How can we amplify them so that they reach Washington, D.C.? And I think the answer is really collaboratives with partners such as the ones here today, and also with public officials, such as those in the city or even the state. So that's just something else that I wanted to put out there, that how important it is for organizations like MUA that want to be politically active, but we are really, engaging women in communities that don't have power in and of ourselves. So we really need these allies. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lourdes. And agreed. I mean, look, we come from the Office of Civic Engagement and Immigrant Affairs. We speak, we live, we preach civic engagement. And you don't need to have a vote to be civically engaged. It is, people may feel that gives them more power and more legitimacy. It doesn't. If you are a resident of a city and a county and a state and a country, you have a voice and your voice does count. So I think in terms of encouraging your membership to be engaged, we have seen it with so many of the organizations, the CEOs that are here with us today, when they hold town halls, members of the community stand up and speak. They come to the commission, they stand up and they speak, and their voices are counted. We are a conduit here at the commission to make sure that the voices of our communities are heard. So please encourage your membership and your community to come to commission meetings and to stand up and to make sure that their stories are heard and that their concerns are heard. Sarah Souza has put in the chat, commissions for all. We now have the opportunity for any resident in San Francisco, regardless of immigration status, to be on a commission for the city and county. We encourage any members of our community who have an interest in being part of this commission, or indeed any commission, because every commission and the work of every commission impacts the lives of our residents. So we encourage any of our community members to apply for commissions that might be of interest to them. And of course, in terms of organising, CBOs do it best, coming together to organise, to elevate the voice of the community member. And we encourage all of our community groups here to continue to do that. And in the power of your collaboratives, you can bring information to us, and we can in turn use that to represent you with the board and with the mayor, and of course public comment at the Board of Supervisors hearings, their weekly meetings. It's there. The platforms are there. We just need to let all members of our community know that it is safe to do so, and they should do so. So thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Paz, I am going to pause to you and just see if there are any questions for any members, any of our speakers who have spoken thus far before I move on.
Thank you, Chair. No questions have been noted as at this time. We can continue.
Actually,
thank you, Vice Chair Paz.
Yeah. Yes.
Commissioner Dime would like to ask a question.
In the chat, I asked if Aaron could provide us information about the issues that he was talking about, African and Caribbean immigrants in detention being isolated in solitary confinement. If Baja or Aaron or Dr. Tesfaye can provide us those documents so that we can have them.
Okay, perfect. Request made. And if we could have those sent into the into staff for the commission, civic engagement at sfgov.org is the best email address, I think, unless someone corrects me. And I might ask one of the staff to pop that email address into the chat box at the side so that Aaron would have that for submission. And then also, thank you. There we go. civic.engagement@sfgov.org. Thanks, Melissa. And Lourdes has shared the video Women's Strength During a Time of Pandemic in the chat group. If people would like to take that link and watch it at your leisure. So again, Lourdes, thank you for being with us this evening. Our next speaker is from Chinese for Affirmative Action, CAA, and it is Annette Wong, Director of Programs. Annette, delighted to have you back with us this evening. The floor is yours.
Good evening. Thank you, Director Pond, Chair Kennelly, and the Immigrant Rights Commission. And to my fellow colleagues who are here, thank you for also sharing all of your wonderful insights. Thank you for hosting this important hearing to discuss some of the challenges that have been before us over the last 4 years. My name is Annette Wong, and I'm the Director of Programs at Chinese for Affirmative Action, a 51-year-old civil rights organization located in San Francisco's Chinatown. Since 2017, the Trump administration has used administrative changes to the immigration system to penalize and prevent working class families, limited English proficient immigrants of color from making this country their home. As already mentioned earlier, public charge has been a roller coaster for a lot of the community members we serve, especially during COVID. And CAA has seen countless Chinese community members questioning their enrollment in benefits programs out of fear for the immigration repercussions they may face. And while the Biden-Harris administration has committed to rolling back the changes of the current administration, we can't simply go back to the policies of the past. We urge government at all levels, federal, state, and local, to use their power to expand access to public benefits for all immigrants, such as healthcare access, financial assistance, and access to food security without fear of penalty. As we have seen with COVID, this is not simply an immigration matter. It's a matter of public health, safety, and well-being, and we know that it is possible to expand these access programs. Sally also mentioned earlier, another big change that has impacted Chinese community members greatly is the proposed USCIS fee increases to programs like naturalization. There has been a lot of heightened fear around the proposed increases, and assuming that the Biden-Harris administration does not pursue these increases, as Sally mentioned earlier, local and state governments still can provide access to programs and resources that alleviate financial hardships associated with immigration applications, including in-language support for different interview preparations and also the civics exam. Related to this, we want to urge the next administration to invest in a more efficient, functional, and sustainable USCIS. And we appreciate our colleague, Jennifer LaForce earlier. We understand that the staff at USCIS are working tirelessly, but really it is about the leadership of USCIS to change the direction that office has been headed. We want a USCIS that is fiscally strong and not on the backs of immigrant fees. We want a USCIS that addresses backlogs that have continued to pile up during the Trump administration. And we want a USCIS that focuses on providing accessible information and processing applications fairly as a benefits agency and not an enforcement agency. As it relates to affirmative relief programs such as Asylum, Chinese nationals make up about 30% of asylum seekers. And with new restrictions on asylum over the last several years, it has become much more difficult for people to claim and win asylum. We need an asylum system that is compassionate and accessible to people who are already fleeing hardship. In relation to DACA, we urge the administration to provide a path to permanent status for current and potential DACA holders and to expand its benefits. And in relation to the 11 million undocumented, we demand a path to citizenship that is not arduous, years long, or overly burdensome in terms of its demands of applicants. As it relates to immigration enforcement and border security, as it impacts all communities, we urge the administration to commit to ending contracts with for-profit prison companies, to put an end to spurious grounds for detaining and deporting individuals, and to end ICE's gross abuse of power, even amounting to abolishing ICE. As it relates to border security, we urge the new administration to lift all travel bans motivated by dubious, racist, and classist motivations. These are just a few of the examples of the actions of the Trump administration that have adversely impacted CAA's community and all immigrants. And this does not even include the harmful and hateful rhetoric towards immigrants that have filled the airways since Trump ran for office, and it cannot be separated from what we saw at the Capitol last week. The Biden-Harris administration must address and redress the harm of Trump-era immigration policy and rhetoric, and the harm of Obama-era immigration policy and rhetoric that also separated people from their families. But we know we can't rely solely on change at the federal level. In the last 4 years, amidst the bleak backdrop of the federal landscape, we have seen successful efforts at the local, state, and regional levels in terms of programs and policies that have provided an outlet for immigrants seeking access, whether it's access to financial resources, public services, or opportunities, despite lack of documentation. And many of those programs have been housed at OSEA, at the Mayor's Office of Housing and Community Development, and other local departments. Additionally, we have seen innovative and effective state policies to reform detention and deportation that we can all learn from. It's not enough to just undo Trump and his policies. We must forge a new path forward with concrete policies and programs that promote inclusion from a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity, and from a place of compassion rather than fear. Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thank you, Annette. And Annette, I might ask also if you could submit your remarks in a written format to us as well, so that we have the full list that you just detailed with us. So thank you so much for being with us this evening. Vice Chair Paz, just going to pop over to you. Any questions for anybody at this point?
I don't see none, Chair, not at this moment.
Perfect. Thank you, Vice Chair. Our next speakers are, we've got two speakers who are coming to us from Commissions for All. Gabriel Medina, co-chair, and Sarah Souza. They are the two co-chairs from Commissions for All, and Sarah is also one of the legislative aides for Supervisor Peskin. So welcome to you both. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having us. I'm going to start off. This is Gabriel Medina, and Sarah's going to bring it home. So hold on, why isn't it working here? So thank you for having us tonight. I prepared this presentation. I submitted it for you to have. So first, I want to start off thanking this commission for your resolution in support of Prop C. As you can see, we won. So we got 54% of the vote, and just a couple insights about that. It doesn't change. All right, there we go. A couple insights is there is a very distinct voting bloc for immigrants' rights in San Francisco, and I think folks should be empowered to introduce as many measures as they can to push things forward. As we know, San Francisco is a model and often a harbinger for things to come. So the more we can do here, they're basically exact maps from 4 years ago. Prop N, as many of you know, was immigrant parent right to vote, which several people on this committee here, or this commission here, and the guests here were part of both of these measures. I'm talking about Adubu with African American Network, Annette and Hong Mei with Chinese for Affirmative Action, Larissa with Caresen. And for Prop C, also we forgot to thank Nima for introducing that resolution, first of all, and Commissioners Paz and Monge and Honoree Melba Maldonado for their involvement. Thanks so much. What's to be gained? We've been very clear about representation and equity on commissions. It's been lacking. It's been dropping every year since 2015. And Asian Latinx populations have the widest inequity, coincidentally or not really, who have very large immigrant populations as part of our populations. There's also talk about how we can even have equity for immigrants as a whole, as a group. Since San Francisco is 35% foreign-born, how can we make sure that each commission or or each department, or how can we ensure that type of equity in every department? And then we want to talk about, for example, non-citizens who can't receive federal benefits. They're receiving a lot of benefits from, Human Rights Commission. They're getting a lot of input from the Health Commission, but not necessarily directly representing themselves. Next, there's a lot of change in here. Hold on. There you go. So there's still some work to do. There's the application. So we're working with sponsor of this measure, now President Shaman Walton, to update the charter, change the commission application, ensure security for new applicants, educate the city, mayor, board of supervisors departments to include, non-citizen immigrants in their recruitment, and educate the public, starting with, ethnic media outreach is what we're doing with Commissioner Walton's office, and broader recruitment with support for applicants from us, Commissions for All. We are a coalition of, immigrants, labor, and community-based organizations. Many of you are here today. And with that, I want to bring it over to Sarah Sousa to continue from here.
Thank you, Gabriel. First, I want to thank the chair and the entire Immigrant Rights Commission. I'm so honored to represent the voices of immigrant as a dreamer myself, who lives in an undocumented household, who live firsthand the challenges of what immigrant families face in the entire country. Commissions for All definitely define a historic moment in San Francisco by allowing immigrants to have a seat at the table and represent ourselves, to have an impact on policy outcomes, but also the future of San Francisco as a way to model immigrant integration. I want to, before I move forward with more information on Commissions for All, I would like to allude to the importance of fighting for an immigration reform that's inclusive for all, for 11 million immigrants. As a dreamer, I do want a path to citizenship so I can vote one day. But I also want my mom to have the opportunity to get her residency and become a citizen of this country. I want her to have the same rights and a seat at the table as everyone else. As we talk about immigrant rights, it's important for us to include the most impacted leaders. For long, historically enough, immigrants have only shared their stories, but never had the opportunity to have a seat at the table to advocate for themselves. And with Commissions for All, we have defined a moment for all San Franciscans, regardless of immigration status, to have a seat at the table. So as Gabriel alluded to, we will be working on the implementation, and we're working with the president of the board and leaders in San Francisco. So we invite you to join our efforts and help us build representation in San Francisco by joining Commissions for All. We meet once a month, the fourth Monday of the month at 6 p.m. I believe Gabriel shared the slide with the information. Thank you for your work on the PowerPoint, Gabriel, by the way. It has been a great fight. And, the message that we want to share today is not only important to fight for immigration reform, it's also important to keep advocating for immigrant integration and ensure that immigrants are treated as human beings, that we remove illegal from our language, from applications, that we humanize the face of immigrants as they belong to this country. As a matter of fact, we pay over $3 billion in taxes yearly, statewide and locally. This is only California. Again, as was mentioned earlier by Lourdes, I'm blanking on her last name, with Mujeres Unidas y Activas, she made a great point. It's about time to allow immigrants to build political power by having access to these important positions. Immigrant rights commissions are doing an immense job in representing, but I think it's important for us to take to the next level, where we actually bring these leaders, domestic workers, to have a seat at the table so they can have a direct impact on policy outcomes. As we saw with COVID-19, immigrants were disproportionately impacted and yet did not have any representation. Human Rights Commission, Planning Department, none. So now we look forward to working with you, Immigrant Rights Commission, but also community leaders to help us build a pipeline of immigrant leaders with Black and Brown solidarity. And we hope that we can count on you to help us with recruitment, build an infrastructure where we can welcome everyone to commissions and also co-host trainings. Gabriel and I will be following up with you And we have our great website, and we'll be sharing updates. But again, I hope that we can continue working together, building these partnerships, not only to build civic engagement, but immigration reform for all and health and equity for Black and brown communities. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Gabriel. And yes, please do count on the Immigrant Rights Commission as a partner in your Commissions for All campaign as you move it forward to the next level. It is something that we are very interested in. We are very interested in opening our doors and including non-citizen immigrants on our commission. Delighted to have anybody who is interested in applying to the commission to do so. So we encourage you to partner with us as you move forward and as you continue to educate the broad San Francisco community on the measure as passed. Okay, I'm just going to remind our next speakers that your time limit is 3 minutes. You will get a 1-minute warning from Jamie Richardson in the chat group. And again, she will let you know when your time is up. So I do ask that everybody just please be mindful of the time. We are now 2 hours into our meeting. We are not yet done. We have not yet opened to public comment. And we still have a number of speakers that we need to get through from our community-based organizations. So with that note, I am moving on to Dolores Street Community Services. And Laura Valdez is with us this evening, the Executive Director. Welcome, Laura. The floor is yours.
Good evening, Immigrant Rights Commissioners. I am Laura Valdez, and I am the Executive Director of the Lotus Street Community Services. And I have a few slides that I'd like to share with all of you, and I'm going to be mindful of the time, so I'm only going to share some of the slides on the presentation, but we've submitted the full presentation for your review. So I'd like to offer some insights and recommendations based on our work with our 2 worker collectives, La Colectiva and San Francisco Day Labor. And as Sarah and Lourdes from Mujeres Unidas Activas noted, domestic workers and day laborers in San Francisco are, and in the country are some of the most marginalized and some of the most impacted by the COVID pandemic. And as we all know, they've not only been impacted in their health and well-being, but in their economic standing, already very, very much impacted during this year. And I'd like to share some of that data. In terms of our 51 core leaders of La Colectiva, the base of domestic workers is larger than that, but some of the data that we've been following very closely has been with these core leaders. And as we can see here, many of them have themselves been tested positive for COVID-19, and many of them have been seriously ill. Many of them have lost relatives from COVID, either here or in their home countries. And then in our worker center, we've really seen a decrease in terms of our work requests, going from 2 per day, going from 2 per day from an average of 10 per day. And then the average loss per month of income for our worker base has been $2,285. Collectively, for these 51 leaders, it's been almost close to $600,000 that they have reported in loss of income. And as we all know, they've also incurred significant debt because of back rent that they now owe. And as we also see the impact, it's rippling out to their families in their home countries, and they haven't been able to send much financially to their members. And then now I'm going to jump a little bit down here. In terms of our recommendations, we really urge the city to prioritize the economic well-being of our base, and Latinx community and immigrant community really needs to be prioritized in terms of the workforce development and expand subsidized employment and hiring programs for undocumented workers, funding to ensure safe work environments for all essential workers, digital equity, explore partnerships to address digital divide and provide affordable connectivity and internet services to immigrant households, free high quality computers and smartphones, including cell phone service. We've seen how the systems have completely broken down and our community has been left out because they are not afforded the same digital equity as other residents in San Francisco. And of course, housing stability, guaranteeing rent and forgiveness, and expand eviction moratoriums. We need to leverage local and state funds to acquire permanent and affordable and supportive housing for immigrant and working families and individuals who are at risk of displacement. And in terms of our just recovery, we really urge the city to invest in culturally competent wraparound services to reduce the economic, social, and health impacts of COVID-19, and funding for strategic community-based interventions, such as those that have been already put forth by the Latinx COVID-19 Response and Recovery Group, the Economic Recovery Task Force, and the San Francisco Latino Task Force. And in all of our solutions, we have to include the affected and most impacted community. Our folks need to be at the table, and we have seen just amazing work from the domestic workers here in California. They lead the work in the nation when it comes to the Bill of Rights for domestic workers. And this last year, they spent significant amount of time trying to pass Senate Bill 1257, but unfortunately, the governor vetoed that. We need support for an expansion of unemployment insurance and other work-linked benefits to ensure that they cover all workers who contribute to the system, and ensure that all workers in mixed immigration status families and workers with ITINs are eligible to receive those benefits. We need to ensure adequate access to OSHA protections for immigrant workers, and make sure that we invest in community-based organizations and worker centers that are critical to fight wage theft and enforce other labor standards and protections, and advocate for an executive order that would temporarily compensate workers for wages lost due to COVID-19, for pending a congressional stimulus package. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for expanding upon some of the comments that have been made by other speakers before you. Again, could I please ask that you would submit your presentation to the Office of Civic Engagement and Immigrant Affairs so that it can be circulated to the commissioners post this evening's meeting. So again, thank you for being here. Our next community-based organization is one that is very close to the hearts of the Immigrant Rights Commission and the Office of Civic Engagement and Immigrant Affairs, and that is DREAM SF. And at this point, I would like to give a shout out to our Deputy Director, Richard Whipple, who takes all of these amazing young fellows under his proverbial wing and takes care of them and gets them into absolutely wonderful fellowships with many of the community-based organizations that are on the call this evening. So representing DREAM SF this evening, we have Noe Diaz and Raylin Aguado, and I'm not sure if Jenny Martinez has joined us or not, but I am going to welcome both Noe and Raylin. Welcome to you both this evening, and the floor is yours.
Oh, hi everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges that undocumented students suffer going through college. One of the first ones is not being able to access financial aid. We know that DACA passed, but it only basically covers like students who came here as children, and there are like a lot of students who came here as young adults that don't qualify for DACA. Luckily, there is the California DREAM Act, but it requires students to go to high school for 3 years to qualify for financial aid when they're going to college. And there is the case that there are many like students and like adults that are going to college or trying to go to college, but they don't qualify because they didn't go to high school here for 3 years. Luckily, a couple of years ago, California passed the Senate Bill 68, which allows undocumented people to basically go to college if they attend an adult school and a community college for 3 years. So that's helpful, but still like delays the process. It takes like students like a couple more years in able to qualify for financial aid. And once students are able to actually go to college and go to a university, there is the next challenge that's trying to get some work experience. Many schools don't offer work study jobs to students who don't have documents, so that's a big challenge. In many schools, I know in Berkeley, there are many firms, many big companies like Apple, Facebook, Google that come to recruit students, but undocumented students, unfortunately, don't have access to applying to those internships and fellowships that they offer. So that's like a really, really big challenge. So after finally going through a lot to be able to qualify for financial aid, there is like the next big challenge, which is getting some work experience and getting a job. And this is when the Dream SF Fellowship comes here, because it's basically giving students like an opportunity to get some like professional work experience. That's what like programs like this are really important. We would like the Biden administration to pass like an immigration reform, like that's very inclusive, that includes like everyone. But I know this is like super hard, and maybe one of the things that we can probably request the administration would be to maybe extend DACA to like young professionals and students that are going to college and didn't qualify for DACA. So maybe the expansion of DACA would be like a good suggestion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Noe, for your words, and also good evening. Thank you guys for giving us space to speak as Dream SF Fellows. My name's Raylan. I am an Asian Pacific Islander dreamer, fully undocumented, and I would just like to share my sentiment in the significance of the Dream SF Fellowship. Through the fellowship, I have been able to gain upward mobility in regards to saving enough money as right now, especially under the pandemic. Along with this, I've met a professional network of community builders who are willing to help dreamers. And I think that's completely super, super important, especially when the resources are often limited. And also in regards to what Ms. Celine Kennelly has shared, Richard Whipple has done extravagantly along with Valeria Suarez, making sure that each of the dreamer are taken care of, whether that's coming from letters of recommendation to passing along resources for financial, housing, and food security, which I think are very significant and evidently are needed in the dream space, because oftentimes we are often overlooked and often our resources are limited. But through the Dream SF Fellowship, it has evidently shown us that immigrants, especially dreamers, are valued, visible, and heard. And for that, I would just like to say my greatest thankful and thank you for the opportunity to give us upward mobility through the Dream SF Fellowship and for the OSEA network as well. Thank you.
Thank you both for being with us this evening and for your presentation. And we're delighted to hear that DreamSF has been such a positive experience for you. We will certainly feed that back to the Board of Supervisors and the Mayor to make sure that there is continued funding and support for our DreamSF Fellows. It is an exceptional program, and we are delighted that we have both Richard and Valadis who are managing the program on our behalf. And thanks to both Noe and Raylan for your comments and for the amazing work. There's a lot of good feedback coming in here to you on the chat feature. So thank you both, and we look forward to the continuation of this program. Okay, so moving on to our next speaker, if I have my list. I am delighted to welcome representing Legal Services for Children. We have Cecilia Candia, Associate Legal Director. Cecilia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting us to speak tonight. Along with being the Associate Legal Director, I'm also an immigration attorney at Legal Services for Children. As a little bit of background, LSC represents youth in the areas of dependency, education, guardianship, and immigration. In our immigration practice, we represent children detained in federal custody, as well as children, teenagers, and transitional age youth living in the community. In the last 4 years, we have witnessed a drastic slowing down and also making much more difficult these processes that are supposed to provide protection and benefits for immigrant youth. And by this, I mean asylum, special immigrant juvenile status, U visas for victims of crime, T visas for victims of trafficking, as well as DACA. And there are many things I can talk about, but I wanted to highlight how these changes have negatively affected the economic stability of the youth we work with. And so actually, some of the things I'm going to say are going to be similar to what Noe and Raylan just talked about, because it's the issue of economic opportunities and job opportunities. So many of our clients have a great need to work in order to support themselves. Some of them are unaccompanied youth. Some of them are living with families that don't have very many resources. Some of them are living with extended family members or strangers. They're supporting themselves, they're supporting siblings, they're supporting some of them family in their home countries. And some of our clients have their own children that they're also supporting. We have clients also that are in the foster care system and are aging out of care soon, and so they need to be able to provide for themselves. So there's a great need for economic opportunities and training and services for young people, regardless of whether or not they have a Social Security number. The Dream SF folks just talked about DACA, but as another example, many of our clients have special immigrant juvenile status. There is now a massive backlog of visas, which means that they're going to have to wait for years before they can apply for permanent residency. And until then, they don't qualify for employment authorization or a Social Security number. So even our clients who are in the foster care system who have SIJ are unable to access many of the job training opportunities because these require a Social Security number. So they're left out of important opportunities for career training. As another example, some of our clients have employment authorization, such as asylum applicants, but because USCIS is taking so long to process these applications, their current documents are going to expire before the new ones are approved. So there's a great fear of loss of employment, loss of income, ability to pay rent, ability to provide for themselves and their families. Now, our clients are amazing, they're resourceful, they're resilient, but they're facing a precarious economic situation. And this is only made worse by the few safety nets that are available to them, as well as the COVID situation. So we're asking the city to support them with training, internships, and fellowship opportunities, career building. In addition to the above, we ask that San Francisco prioritize opportunities for services instead of reacting with punishment for young people, that they strengthen non-collaboration. Okay, sorry, I'm done. But just very quickly that in addition to like the filing fees that are being held by the city, we ask that they also include fees, for example, for medical exams, which are required for adjustment of status for permanent residency. But my 3 minutes are up. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak tonight.
Thank you, Cecilia, and thank you for being so mindful of the time. I do appreciate that. Again, I will ask if you could submit your remarks to us in writing, and we will just make sure that everything, I just want to make sure that we have captured everything. Yes, we will make sure to take all these pieces and move them forward in our conversations and our recommendations out of this hearing this evening. So thank you for your presentation. Our next speaker is representing the LGBT Asylum Project, Hans is with us this evening. Hans, are you still, do we have you? There we have you. Hans Howe, how are you? Nice to see you. And the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm Hans Howe, and I'm here to speak as a client of Okan Singun from the LGBT Asylum Project, which is the only San Francisco nonprofit dedicated to providing accessible legal representation to LGBT asylum seekers. I'm also a gay asylee from Malaysia who recently received an asylum approval from the San Francisco Asylum Office. I count myself to be very lucky to be able to get an interview at the Asylum Office, even though I applied for asylum back in 2017, and I have waited for 3 long years to get my asylum approval. There are many other asylum seekers in our city who are not as fortunate as I am, as they are stuck in a significant backlog worsened by the last in, first out policy introduced by the Trump administration in January of 2018, causing them to have to wait 4 or 5 years or even longer just to get an interview. The Trump administration has also tried to implement the death to asylum rule, which would have gone into effect today if it weren't recently blocked by the US District Court. This rule would have eliminated eligibility for asylum seekers with gender-based claim, which would directly affect LGBTQ as immigrants who have had to flee violence in their home countries. The Trump asylum rule would also extend a time in which asylum seekers have to wait before they are eligible to apply for a work permit from 150 days to 1 year. Despite the public comments that opposed this rule, the Trump administration responded by telling folks to familiarize themselves with resources for homelessness. This is simply unacceptable, especially during the pandemic when immigrants, including asylum seekers, are not eligible to get federal relief checks reserved for US citizens. If asylum seekers are not allowed to work in the first year after they apply for asylum, how would they be able to support themselves? This rule would also impose an application fee for an asylum application for the first time, which would unfairly penalize asylum seekers, many of whom arrive in the US with minimal resources. Due to San Francisco's reputation as a sanctuary city, we have a significant asylum seeker population, especially those who identify as LGBTQ+, who need access to legal representation and other social services. Many of them who due to their inability to work legally, face heightened risk of homelessness. Fortunately, we have nonprofits that provide direct services to asylum seekers, but at a time of budget cuts, local legal providers like the LGBT Asylum Project are under severe resource constraint. And for them to be able to continue to serve our most vulnerable immigrants, they need more consistent, stable funding. And I would like to call on the Immigrant Rights Commission to strongly advocate to increase city funding through the community block development grants and other funding sources to local nonprofits so that they can pay their application fees, survive financially while their case is still pending, and to have access to legal counsel. Our asylum seekers in San Francisco, especially those who are LGBTQ+, are in crisis, and my hope is that we will not leave them behind, given the reputation of our city in embracing diversity and inclusion. Thank you for letting me share.
Hans, thank you for being with us this evening and congratulations on the approval of your asylum application. We are all very painfully aware of how restrictive the outgoing administration has made the process, the delays that have been involved. So we're delighted that your adjudication has been approved, and we hope that the incoming administration will improve the process for all of those who have cases pending and who may need to file cases in the future. So thank you for being with us this evening. And we have made a note of your remarks about the increase in funding. So thank you, Hans. We are moving to our second to last community-based organisation from Priority Africa Network. It's Priscilla Ankra, Programme Associate. Priscilla, thank you for being with us this evening. Thank you for sticking with our very long agenda, and the floor is now yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for introductions. As the speaker mentioned, I'm Priscilla Ankara, and I'm speaking on behalf of Priority Africa Network as a longtime member and supporter. So as an African immigrant, I am in a community of a growing population in the Bay Area. Just over the past 2 decades, our population size has grown exponentially across the US, in California and the Bay Area. Badgie recently did a report in 2018 where it found that 7% of the Black migrant population in the state of California, of that 7%, 60% of the Bay Area's Black migrants are African, 33% are East African, 17% are West African, and the rest are from various parts of Africa. Politically, however, Black migrants remain casualties within the politics of invisibility. We are relegated to the margins of a narrative about immigration that is dominated by people who are not Black. Within this, we are subsumed under a singular imagination of Blackness that erases the rich cultural and ethnic diversity found within it. At no other time has immigration been so racialized as in the last 4 years, and at no other time have Black immigrants been more invisible to policymakers and philanthropic organizations. So for example, while several news agencies focused on the plight of Latin American migrants at the border, these agencies alighted over the hundreds of Black migrants who are also trapped in the same predicament. We remain excluded outside of mobilizing strategies of the largest immigrant rights organizations, while not being seen as part of traditional African American institutions. Members of our Black migrant communities are not homogenous. We are diverse in gender identities and sexual orientation. We are young, old, and in between, organized around ethnic, national, cultural, faith, and professional organizations. Some of us are newly arrived and others have been here for decades. But our 2 most important identities that matter are Black and migrant. At no other time in history has our place in this nation been more threatened, marginalized, and now deeply impacted by the pandemic. We are confronted on all sides. We face the peril of racism, the precarity of the financial instability that often accompanies immigrant status. This precarity is further amplified through the unavailability of financial assistance designated for immigrant communities. State agencies and philanthropic organizations focus on numbers, serving populations that can provide the biggest bang for their buck. And consequently, they focus solely on Hispanic and Asian communities at the expense of our people. So what happens as a result of these practices? When health alerts are posted in multiple languages, Amharic, Tigrinya, Igbo, Akan, the Ilanga-speaking people are left in the dark. Our small businesses close down because they do not receive federal grants, and our children fall behind in remote learning. We too are part of the American fabric. We live, we love, we work, and we contribute in so many vital ways to this society. We deserve to be seen and to have a fair shot at life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in this nation of immigrants. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla, and thank you for your comments. And I think you certainly bring a different perspective and another voice to the table. And again, I would appreciate if you could, on behalf of the Commission, forward your comments, your remarks to our staff, so that again we can have it. There was a lot of data and a lot of information there that I wasn't fast enough to capture. So thank you for being with us this evening. We have come to our final speaker, and just as Melba Maldonado was one of the long-term and very significant, we recognized her at the beginning of the program. At the end of the program, I would like to welcome another amazing lady who has done a huge amount of work on behalf of our immigrant communities and has been one of the leaders of not only the San Francisco Pathways to Citizenship Initiative, but also SF Counts, and does, she never doesn't answer the call to serve on behalf of our communities. I would like to welcome President and CEO of Self Help for the Elderly, Annie Chung. Annie, thank you for being with us this evening. The floor is yours.
And Director
Annie, you're still muted. Oh, there we go. We have you. Thank you.
I think I'm unmuted now. Good. Can you all hear me now? Okay. Thank you very much, Celine and commissioners and Adrian, Richard, and the whole team at OSEA. I'm Annie from Self Help for the Elderly. I first want to sign on tonight to really thank Melba, Commissioner McDonaldo, my friend for many, many years. She was one of our first partner of the SF Pathway back in 2013 when Director Pon and Eric Cohen from ILRC conceived the project of SFPCI on a napkin in a restaurant. And I was told that if you have a dream, share it with others, and then your dream will come true. And so Adrian and Eric shared their dream with me. And then we apply for some foundation funding, I think initial funding, and that's the birth and establishment of the SF Pathway. It was supposed to be a 3-year initiative, but under Mayor Ed Lee, he liked the project so much that by the second year, he said that he extended the life of the project to as long as he's mayor in San Francisco. So here we go. This is the 8th year of the SF Pathway Commissioners and Director Pon. And I just want to point out that without the commission support and without the OSEA support, the 15,000 LPRs at Victoria representing a pillow that spoke earlier for us would not have been assisted to become US citizens. And we've heard from a lot of speakers tonight that the election of President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris would not have happened if not for all of the immigrants that voted during this election, and particularly from people of color. So naturalization becomes just such an important, really, task and responsibility for all of us. And I'm also happy to report that in the last 7 years, this is our 8th year, over 3 million residents in San Francisco mostly, but also in the Bay Area, because at every naturalization workshop, other counties' residents come to participate. And we have reached over 3 million of those residents, particularly through HSA, which is a major partner that help us do outreach by sending letters to all the recipients with HSA, and those are our targeted population. Over 10,000 people would by now have become US citizens because of SF Pathways efforts. And a couple more statistics, which will be heartwarming, I hope, to all the commissioners, is we have helped over 5,800, almost 6,000 participants were able to waive their application fee. And by so doing, we have helped these families save over $4.5 million. If we didn't have this project, then a lot of them could not afford the fees, and then they would not be able to become US citizens, or until they saved up the money for it. And I think that the most impressive figure that I want to share with you is if we added up all the legal fees, because SF Pathway is mostly volunteer by lawyers and also BIAs, and if we added all the legal fees, the project have brought in volunteers and the legal fee saving at almost $18.8 million. So almost $19 million in legal fees really were saved because of the project. So I'm here to ask you that at the end of 2021, we hope the SF Pathway project will still continue. Really, it is the pathway and our partners hope there are 7 of us, 7 CBOs that have worked so hard, on these group workshops despite COVID. I'm very proud of our partners, and really we've become a very close-knitted group, along with Richard and Jamie, who attended, all of our meetings. We have managed to pivot our work to virtually using Zoom, but it's a huge challenge to do that. From usually a couple hundred participants, we're now, for each of those Zoom workshops, we could only maybe serve 30, maybe 50 maximum. But our collaborative did not stop there. We have scheduled 2 workshops, continually make improvement, and we have scheduled another 4 workshops in the coming months. And hopefully we will be able to reopen soon and then serve a lot more people instead of just using the Zoom platform, because by going virtual, it already deprived a lot, of our immigrants who just don't have the capacity to use a virtual platform. They have to meet in person in order to fill out all of the forms. So with that, I urge the Commission to consider the continuation of the SF Pathway project with the 7 partners, with all the lawyers, with all the volunteers. I don't know if I mentioned that we actually had a total of almost 7,000 volunteers for all these workshops during the last 7 years. And again, these are mostly BIA accredited reps and also lawyers and staff attorneys from our partner agency. So I want to end by just thanking all of you, not just also for the pathway, but also for the census work. I was co-chair for Ms. Pond's 2020 Census Committee with my co-chair, Andrea Shorter, and COVID and the Trump administration has threw us into such an awful space, but we didn't give up. I think that Adrian's team, Robert, Aaron, Melissa, Jamie, really every one of them worked so hard. And every one of our 2020 Census Committee also worked so hard. So thanks to Celine and also Mario and Jesse, Commissioner Jesse, and also Sarah. I don't know Sarah from Supervisor Paskin's office. When our community couldn't really go online or use the phone to fill out their census forms, we went 12, 13, 14 weeks every Saturday out in the community to do outreach and tabling. And Adrian's staff and Sarah and Mario and Jaime we've been out there in order to get our census numbers up. Adrian, I don't know if we reached our complete count this year, for 2020 census, but we have done everything we could to really move the needle. I want to end by sharing with you that the COVID had brought, our community almost to a stop, but it reminded me of a quote from Winston Churchill. He said something like, it's no use saying we're trying our best. In these crises, you've got to succeed in doing what is necessary. I think that throughout all the testimonial tonight and all the speakers, I think we are all grantees of OSEA and the Commission. And I think that not just trying our best during this crisis, but we have done everything we could to make it necessary for our immigrant communities to survive and also thrive. So on behalf of our community, thank you so much, Commissioner Celine, all my friends. We will do our best because we know that you have our backs and you're covering for us. And Melba, if you're still on the call, thank you really so much for all that you do. I hope that you stay around and that we could call on you to come back to volunteer in some of our future workshops. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you for all of your work. They're quite amazing numbers. that you shared with us. I don't think I had gotten them all into my head at one time. So huge congratulations to you and to everybody, to all 7 organizations with SF Pathways on an amazing, hugely successful program. I mean, you have changed the lives of, what did we say, 10,000 people, and it's more than that. For each individual that you naturalized, you changed and improved the lives of many, many more by changing and improving the lives of their families. So congratulations to you all for the work that you do, and we look forward to supporting SF Pathways in the future. Mayor Lee was a huge advocate of it. I know that Mayor Breed is also a supporter of Pathways, and we look forward to, when we're all back in person, seeing Mayor Breed back with us again, as all of our mayors since the founding of SF Pathways have done. They've come and they have thanked our amazing volunteers and everybody who has been part of Pathways. So thank you and congratulations. So that concludes our speakers for this evening. I do know that we have a statement that was submitted. Bear with me. A statement was submitted by the Filipino Community Center, and I would like to acknowledge that. I am going to see if Director Pan might have a copy of the statement and might be in a position to read the statement. And I think Jamie has just popped it into the chat box also. So Director Pan, I shall hand to you to read the statement as was submitted.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I think Jamie has graciously plugged that into the chat. So commissioners, I'm not going to read the whole statement, but the message is from Joe May from the Filipino Community Center, FCC. Who had to leave but sent comments in writing that you see now. And the comments are about the track record of prosecuting community members through the federal initiative for the Tenderloin program, which several speakers referenced earlier, involving the U.S. Attorney Dave Anderson, as well as our City Attorney Herrera. And part of the concern is through that program, nearly 230 community members have been charged with civil injunctions on 28 people in an attempt to stop the drug dealing in the Tenderloin. And the concern of the community is that this is not really addressing the real issues, which are both social and economic, their health, housing, lots of issues for the people in that community. So they feel like they should be addressing the life affirming services and not putting this community's safety and putting the community's safety and health first, rather than just, trying to control the drug trafficking. So you can read the statement. I think it's well stated, and we'll enter that into the record for you. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Director. Thank you for that. I would like to thank all of our invited speakers this evening. I would like to thank, beginning with Assembly Member David Chu and Jennifer LaForce from USCIS, and going through all of our community-based organizations. Thank you for staying the course with us this evening for what has been a most informative and educational and thought-provoking hearing for us this evening. We look forward to getting your written submissions, which are always very, very helpful for us to make sure that we have heard what you have relayed to us accurately. So we look forward to getting those written submissions, and they will give us, the Commission, the opportunity to review and to look at how we can support you in your work and how we can best represent you and the communities that you serve to the Board of Supervisors and the Mayor of the City and County of San Francisco. I am going to, before we move on to our next section, which is public comment, I am going to briefly ask if there are any commissioners who have, I'm actually going to defer, I'm going to open to the Vice Chair. I would like to hand to the Vice Chair, and then at most 1 or 2 commissioners if they have anything that they would like to say. If it is a mere thank you, commissioners, I would ask that you, that the Vice Chair and I will have spoken on your behalf. But if there are any commissioners who have anything beyond that to add, we will pause briefly for that. But I'm very anxious to move on to public comment.
Yes, before we move on to public comment, there was a question posted about where the public access the link to the video for tonight. If that information can be, if you can respond on the chat line, please, Melissa, for that information. Thank you for that question. And we will be moving on to public comment. I will ask Melissa to sort of make an opening statement. And I'm going to remind that to members of the public that each speaker will have 2 minutes for public comment. But thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So members of the public and those who are in the attendees right now, you may now start raising your hand for public comment. For those who are joining us by phone, the phone number again is 1415-655-0001, and the access code is 146-121-5191. And again, now that we have open public comment, once you put in that information, you need to press pound twice, and then press *3 to raise your hand. Your hand will be raised in a queue, and I will go down in order of hands raised and unmute you and tell you that that it is now your time to speak. So please wait to hear that your line has been unmuted and it is your turn to speak before you do so. These instructions will now be given in Spanish and in Cantonese.
公眾評論環節，撥打會議電話號碼1415-655-0001，再按照提示輸入訪問代碼146-121-5191，然後按2次井號鍵連線加入會議。當你聽到 B 聲之後，請保持安靜收聽會議，等待公眾評論環節。移民權益委員會主席宣布公眾評論環節開始時，請按咪3號鍵，排隊輪候發言。按咪3號鍵後，你將聽到提示音，你要舉手要求發言，請等待書記叫喚你發言。當你聽到提示音，靜音取消可隨時發言，即代表而家你可發表公眾評論。Thank you， 多謝。
Arturo or Sandra, are either of you able to unmute yourselves and read the instructions, please? Or Connie?
Yo puedo hacerlo. Estas son las instrucciones para hacer comentario público. Marque el número telefónico 415-655-0001. El código de acceso es 146-121-5191. marque estrella 3 y estrella 3 again, otra vez para entrar en la línea de oradores. Gracias.
Okay, thank you. So now I will begin unmuting callers. The first one in the list. Hello, caller, you are unmuted. Please go ahead.
Good morning, or good evening, commissioners. My name is Izzy Oman. I work in deportation defense at La Raza Centro Legal, and I'm a member of the Free SF Coalition. I'd like to speak to you today about an issue that intersects between federal and local policy and uplift the harms that have been committed against primarily Honduran transitional age migrant youth in the Tenderloin by SFPD, the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the City Attorney Dennis Herrera's office. Since the onset of the U.S. Attorney's FIT program that Sarah Lee described, we've seen these transitional age youth be targeted, criminalized, arrested, detained, charged under harsh federal drug crimes, and funneled into the deportation pipeline. SFPD has boasted time and time again about their collaboration with the U.S. Attorney's Office, but has been silent about how turning community members over to federal custody subjects them to deportation. Free SF sees this as a sly get-around of our city's sanctuary ordinance and strongly believes that SFPD should end its collaboration with the U.S. Attorney. Furthermore, City Attorney Dennis Herrera's pursuit of injunctions that would permanently ban 28 majority Honduran individuals from returning to the Tenderloin is a continuation of failed racist policy that will do nothing to improve conditions in the Tenderloin and waste resources that would be much better directed at supporting unhoused and immigrant communities who continue to bear the brunt of the COVID-19 pandemic. I joined Free SF and our community partners based in the Tenderloin in calling for the city attorney to drop these injunctions. We've learned from our social workers in the coalition that many of these individuals who came to the U.S. as unaccompanied minors and spent much time in ICE detention once released were coerced into selling drugs in order to access basic needs such as housing, food, and sanitation. So we urge city and state agencies to provide these youth, these transitional age youth, the resources that they need to survive: mental health care, substance use support, safe injection sites, case management services, job training, supportive housing, immigrant legal support. This is where we need to be putting our resources, and I urge you as the Commission to join us in upholding our sanctuary ordinance by calling for the end of relations between SFPD and the U.S. Attorney, and protecting transitional age migrant youth by calling for the dismissal of the City Attorney's civil injunctions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker. I have just unmuted you. Please go ahead.
Wait.
Hello.
Hello. I'm speaking in Chinese.
Okay,
yeah.
Go ahead.
OK. 大家好，大家晚上好。我係叫 Annie， 我姓張嘅，我係華人權益促進會嘅社區外展員，都係三藩市嘅居民。今日好高興呢，可以代表喺社區發言。
可以停一停啊？請問呢個講者可唔可以停一停啊？
我停低啦。
Melissa, can you please allow me to introduce myself to the speaker in Chinese in order to coordinate and interpret their public comments properly?
Go ahead, Vivian.
呢個講者你好啊，我係你今日嘅口譯員嚇。咁你發言嘅咁你發言嘅時候咧，就首先請你放慢個語速先，然之後咧就清楚發言。咁你每講2到3句説話嘅時候咧，咁就請你停落嚟俾我翻譯嚇。咁你聽到我開始翻譯嘅時候咧，就請你暫停發言。咁你聽我譯完啦，你就繼續發言，好冇啊
？OK，
多謝晒你 ，Thank you。
唔使客氣。咁我係咪而家就要重新嚟過咧？
你重新嚟過啊，唔該晒。
OK， 我而家開始。大家好，大家晚上好。我叫 Annie， 姓張嘅。
Hello everybody, I'm Annie, last name John.
我喺華人權益促進會社區嘅外展員。
I'm a community outreach staff of Chinese Affirmative Action.
亦係喺三藩市居住嘅居民。
I'm also a resident of District 10 of San Francisco.
今日咧，我好高興可以代表社區發言。
Today, I'm very happy to represent our immigrant family to speak out at this hearing.
我哋咧就好希望新上任嘅總統咧撤銷嗰啲傷害移民嘅行政命令。
We are hoping the newly elected president will revoke those administrative orders that hurting immigrants.
廢除嗰啲公共負擔
like public charge policies.
嗰啲公共負擔政策咧就歧視嘅低收入嗰啲移民家庭。
Public charge policy discriminate against low-income immigrant families.
好多嗰啲移民家庭咧，因為害怕被視為公共負擔。
Many immigrant families are afraid of being considered as a public charge.
都唔敢申請嗰啲基本社會嘅保障同埋資源。
So they are there to apply for social support.
譬如嗰啲糧食券啊，同埋白卡咧。
Such as food stamps and Medicare.
因為公共負擔嘅政策咧，就給予嗰啲移民官員咧係拒絕來自低收入嘅家庭嘅綠卡申請。
The public charge policy will make immigrant officers reject applications for green cards from low-income families because the public charge situation.
另外咧，我哋都好希望新嘅聯邦政府個廢除嗰個提升入籍費嗰個政策。
We also hope the new administration will ban the nationality fees increase policy too.
譬如喺今次嘅疫情期間咧
such as during the current pandemic.
我們嘅社區當中咧就有我們嘅社區當中
in our community.
好多嗰啲移民家庭咧得唔到個聯邦政府解困嘅個撥款。
Many immigrant families in our community didn't receive the funds from the federal government.
好多家庭咧都有報稅同埋交稅嘅。
But many families file tax returns and pay taxes.
但係因為移民身份嘅問題咧
But because of their immigration status.
就得唔到任何聯邦政府嘅幫助。
They could not get any help from the federal government.
我相信好多移民社區嘅家庭都同樣面對呢個嘅問題。
I believe that many immigrant families in our community are facing these similar problems.
呢個係好唔公平同埋好嚴重歧視嘅對待。
It's an unfair and severe discrimination.
喺現實生活中
reality.
大家都知道咧，喺美國如果病咗咧，睇醫生嘅費用係非常之昂貴嘅。
Everybody knows the medical cost in America is very expensive, like doctor visit.
特別係嗰啲無證移民。
Especially for undocumented immigrants.
喂？
繼續啊。
我特別嗰啲無證移民，病咗之後咧，需要面對嗰啲生活壓力同埋嘅經濟壓力係非常之大嘅。
Those undocumented immigrants are facing huge life and financial pressure after recover from illness.
就算有臨時嘅緊急三藩市健康保險計劃。
There's a temporary emergency San Francisco health insurance plan.
但係咧，有好多方面都係覆蓋唔到嘅。
There are many aspects that cannot be covered.
譬如嗰啲抽血啦、驗血啦、緊急手術啦等等。
Such as blood draws, blood tests, emergency operations, etc.
都得唔到保障。
Cannot be protected.
我哋希望咧，三藩市政府能夠為無證嘅居民咧提供更完善嘅醫療幫助同埋保障。
That the city can provide more complete medical assistance and protections for undocumented immigrant residents.
多謝晒大家。
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you, caller. Okay, our next one is Maricela Alvarez. Maricela? I'm sorry, Maricela, I don't think we can hear you. Would you mind calling in, please? Okay, I will move on to the next person. Marianne, please go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, please go ahead.
Sure. Hi, my name is Marianne Tassoni, and I live in the Tenderloin. And I'm a member of the Freedom All Coalition, which is a grassroots coalition of community members who are concerned about the safety and well-being of our immigrant neighbors. I would certainly echo a lot of the demands and calls for support and services that other people have articulated, and which I imagine most people on this call already support. But I'd also like to draw your attention to another issue that concerns me, I guess, on a local level. We're supposed to be a sanctuary state and a sanctuary city, yet the state of California continues to work with private prison companies that profit from the incarceration of immigrants and citizens. AB 32 was a good start, but as we know, the GEO Group, which runs private immigration detention centers all over the country, continues to operate prisons, immigration detention centers, and other carceral facilities across the state, including 2 facilities that are within the city of San Francisco. One of these facilities, 111 Taylor Street, is basically right in my backyard. It just suffered a COVID outbreak, and its residents are being retaliated against for speaking out about it. I guess I just want to say that we need to be making it as inhospitable as possible for for-profit detention companies to operate in our city. I believe Sally Kinoshita at the ILRC mentioned that Biden has indicated a willingness to end the use of private detention centers. And, I hope you will also consider examining where there are strategic opportunities for this committee and the city of San Francisco to positively impact this issue as we transition to a new federal administration. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to try Maricela again. Maricela? Go ahead, Maricela.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Good evening, commissioners and members of the public. My name is Maricela. Today, I would like to share with you some struggles that my family members, friends, and members of the community that I belong to have been experiencing with the immigration policies and the pandemic at the same time. I come from a mixed status family, which means not everybody has the same access to services and programs. And it was just really devastating to see family members who are struggling to get their DACA renewals and just to have legal access to assistance with filling out forms or just go to interviews and not speaking the language. It was very devastating that at the same time we're going through all these immigration policies and many of them without the right information dropped their public benefits
just being scared from the public charge rule and just afraid that will be impacting their immigration status at some point. I experienced everything firsthand from my relatives, and it was just really hard to try to educate everyone at the same time and explaining what the process is. It's been really hard to also just going over technology issues and just helping kids from school, like taking video calls from school without having the knowledge and the language access. It was just really hard. Today, I thought it was important for me to share with you all that many of our community members who immigration status is different from many of us have not been able to have access to health insurance, to just, some of my family members tested positive for COVID, and it was just a nightmare to get access to testing, to services, to have a doctor's note for them to go back to their regular job, and many of them lost their jobs, and it was just really hard. And I want today to ask the Commission to please focus our energy in advocating for policies of inclusion regardless of immigration status in our city, and to have the right representation regardless of the immigration status, and also for educational resources and materials that can, give our folks some relief. Thank you.
Thank you, Marisela. Next we have Valeria. Valeria, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I'm Valeria Suarez, and I just want to uplift what both the Free SF Coalition and the Dream SF Fellows have shared. As someone who migrated to this country at the age of 16 and was unable to qualify for that, and just found very limited options to survive in this country, I find that U.S. Attorney Anderson and City Attorney Herrera's actions of criminalizing migrant youth extremely concerning. We have already heard from many community organizations regarding the dangerous impact of the federal initiative for the Tenderloin program, so I won't go in depth into that. But I just want to share that as a city that prides itself in a sanctuary policy, we must ensure we're protecting all our migrant community, not simply those who fit into a specific mold. This means also creating opportunities for folks to survive without putting their livelihoods at risk, especially in the middle of a pandemic. So I urge the city to create more programs, such as the Dream SF program, which I was actually a part of in 2017 and opened a lot of doors for me. So I urge the city to provide more programs who provide professional and personal development for migrant youth, regardless of a status, and really open so many doors for them to develop themselves and grow, versus collaborating with SFPD, who is doing federal enforcement. That'll be all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and we have one more person. Caller, go ahead. You're unmuted. Hello? Okay. And I believe, let's see, next is Carlos. Carlos, go ahead. You're unmuted.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Carlos Porras, calling here with a project called We Rise San Francisco Labor Center for Immigrant Justice, providing immigration services. I just wanted to raise a personal concern of mine in regards to the deployment of the new vaccination, particularly for our immigrant community in city and county. I have learned through some of my labor union members in Orange County, Los Angeles, that they have to use the grounds of Disneyland and the firefighters' headquarters to be able to get access to the whole community to this vaccination process. One may think that this may be a matter of national security, as we all want to have our communities safe and healthy so we can go out on the streets to still doing our work and protest and rally and continue to provide services. But I think it's important for perhaps our immigration rights committee to kind of take a closer look at how this deployment is going to be being done here in city and county, just to make sure that we have as many spots available to our immigrant community, particularly in the times that many folks now don't have health insurance coverage, and they don't have access to, Kaiser or any health insurance at all. So I think if we can start, getting ourselves ready and prepare for getting massive vaccination process, I think something that's concern to me. And I thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I believe Izzy has somebody else on the interpretation line. Izzy, they will need to call this line. And I will put the number in the chat while we see if there's anyone else waiting for public comment. Chair, I believe there are 2 more people waiting, so just 1 second, please. They're trying to get connected. And again, for members of the public, the phone number is 415-655-0001. And the access code is 146-121-5191. You will press pound twice and then *3 to raise your hand. Hello, caller, go ahead. You have been unmuted.
Hello?
Yes, please, go ahead.
大家好啊，我叫 Christina， 我係華人權益促進會嘅社區外展員，我亦都係三藩市第10區嘅居民。
Hello everyone, I'm Christina. I'm a community outreach staff of Chinese Affirmative Action, and I'm also a resident of District 10 of San Francisco.
好高興能夠參加今天嘅聽證會發言，講出我們移民家庭嘅心聲。
Today, I'm very happy to represent our immigrant families to speak out at this hearing.
2020年嘅過去係最困難嘅一年，迎接2021年嘅到來，但疫情依舊嚴峻。
In the past year, 2020, the pandemic was severe, and it was the most difficult year. In 2021, the pandemic remains severe.
好多移民家庭咧都面對失業同埋呢經濟嘅壓力。咁聯邦政府咧紓困方案中嘅1200蚊同埋呢最近每人600蚊嘅補助咧係遠遠唔夠㗎。
Many immigrant families are facing unemployment and economic pressure. The $1,200 in the federal government's rescue plan and the recent subsidy of $600 per person are far from enough.
並沒有特別針對低收入人士嘅家庭提供經濟援助計劃。
There's no financial assistance program specially target at local income people and families.
如像我一樣係單親媽媽嘅家庭，平時需要照顧我讀緊小學2年級嘅女兒，又要工作嚟幫助家計。
Somebody like me, a single family mom, needs to take care of my daughter, who is in elementary school, and also needs to work to help the family.
平時只靠一份兼職嘅收入，往往係唔夠我哋屋企嘅開支。
Usually, the income from one part-time job is not enough for our family.
政府是否應該考慮下對這些家庭呢給予經濟幫助，尤其是像我一樣嘅單親家庭，每個星期呢給予300至500蚊嘅經濟補助呢？
The government consider giving financial assistance to these families, especially single-parent families like us, which provides financial assistance of $300 to $500 per week.
另外，我亦都想講出我哋移民社區呢非常之關注移民政策嘅，尤其是呢喺過去嘅幾年，移民政策呢經常變更改動。
In addition, I want to say that our immigrant community is very concerned about immigration policies, especially in the past few years.
聯邦政府呢用唔同嘅方式呢去收緊移民同埋散播歧視移民嘅情緒。
The federal government have used different methods to tighten immigration and spare discriminations against immigrants.
我知道移民局呢早前已經呢係宣布咗呢入籍申請費用呢同埋呢修改入籍試題㗎。
I know that the Immigration Bureau announced earlier that it will provide nationalization application fees and modify the nationalization tax questions, increasing the nationality price will.
提升入籍嘅價格呢，將會對社區人士呢造成一定嘅經濟影響。
Increasing the nationalization price will cause certain financial difficulties to the community.
試題呢從100題呢升至128題，對於英語語言不通嘅人士嚟講呢係有一定嘅難度。
The text questions will be increased from 100 to 128, which will increase a lot difficulty for people who do not understand English.
希望市政府可以提供更多中文入籍翻譯及服務。
I hope that our city can provide more translations and service for nationalization in Chinese.
幫助語言不通嘅人士呢順利入籍，讓更多人呢成為美國公民。
Those people who do not speak the language can successfully become American citizens.
另外，因為疫情嘅關係，很多美國居民呢目前還是留在中國。
Moreover, due to the pandemic, many American residents are currently staying in China.
以我所了解，已經有好多美國居民呢喺中國攝留已經超過1年幾，仲未返到美國。
As far as I know, many American residents have been staying in China for more than a year and have not yet returned to America.
當攝留喺中國嘅美國公民回美國時，希望政府呢可以協助美國居民呢順利咁回到美國。
When the U.S. residents who stay in China wants to return to America, I hope that the government can provide assistance to them to come back successfully.
希望呢將會得到明確嘅指引。多謝。
Guidance will be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next caller is Gloria. Gloria, go ahead.
Sí, ¿me escuchan? Bueno.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Bueno, mi nombre es Gloria Esteva. Soy organizadora comunitaria en Causa Justa y pertenezco a SF IRC y Free SF. Bueno, lo que yo pudiera pedirles a ustedes como comisionados de los derechos de los inmigrantes es que de veras ellos tuvieran una voz en esa comisión. Porque se menciona...
Gloria, un momentito, por favor. Good evening, my name is Gloria Esteban. I'm here to speak to the Commission. I would like for the commissioners to please focus more your efforts towards COVID relief for immigrants.
Se han mencionado ya bastante los problemas que vive la comunidad inmigrante. En este momento de COVID, es la comunidad más impactada, terriblemente impactada. Y está costando las vidas de esa comunidad.
As we have heard tonight in this meeting, the immigrant community has been severely affected by COVID. We are the most affected community in the city due to the pandemic.
Además de eso, se encuentra ahorita en una situación terrible de falta de economía, falta de alimentos, falta de trabajo.
And we find ourselves in a terrible situation, economically speaking, without work, without funds, without ways to survive.
Les hemos dado apoyo de abogacía, les hemos dado apoyo de educación, hemos dado un poco de apoyo de ayuda mutua con los alimentos. Pero creo que la resolución para ellos es que se inviertan en todas esas necesidades. Y cuando hablamos de abolir el ICE, la comunidad sabe qué significa eso. Sabe que...
We have been helping people with food and with outreach, but we need to do more than just that because the need is much greater than we are actually trying to meet.
Y abolir el ICE significa acabar con el ICE. ¿Por qué? Porque la comunidad ha sufrido demasiado. Está sufriendo dentro de los centros de detención, dentro de sus casas, dentro de sus trabajos. La comunidad migrante son trabajadores esenciales.
To abolish ICE means to bring ICE to an end because our community has suffered in detention centers, our community has suffered in their own homes, our community suffers because we are essential workers.
Y las soluciones que ha dado el abogado de la ciudad son soluciones hipócritas, terribles. ¿Cómo está condenando a la gente que de por sí ha sufrido? La gente del Tenderloin fue secuestrada de sus países para llegar a este país y seguirlos explotando vendiendo drogas. Ellos son las víctimas.
And the solution that the city attorney is giving are not sufficient solutions. They are solutions that are predatory for our community, and our community is suffering. Our community is suffering in the Tenderloin.
Y son jóvenes. Si no somos capaces de cuidar a esos niños que están en transición de ser adultos, ¿qué somos en San Francisco? Nos decimos que somos una comunidad básicamente protectora de los inmigrantes. Y esta comisión, por favor, tiene que darle nombre o significado a su nombre. Comisión de los Derechos de los Inmigrantes. Y creo que la comunidad está preparada.
And the immigrants that we try to help are young. In fact, they are young enough to have their own children. And the politics that we are having are not sufficient for them. The Immigrant Rights Commission needs to live up to its name and really step it up and help immigrants.
Y está tan preparada que participó en la elección de este año de presidente. Y participó para que las cosas sucedieran. al nivel que pudo hacerlo. Y también necesita ser apoyada porque no tiene acceso a los medios de comunicación. Totalmente es una comunidad que ha dado tanto con su trabajo, proveyendo recursos tan grandes a San Francisco, y no es justo que siga siendo tan desprotegida. Y por eso,
this community has helped
sí existe la palabra bullying.
This community has helped to get the vote out. This community has helped form a political voice, but it's not enough for us to be visible and to stand up to ask for help. The commission must do more to help the community.
Y por eso me viene la necesidad de hablar, porque es importante que en esa comisión esté la voz de la comunidad inmigrante y esté integrada la comunidad inmigrante, porque así se sabría lo que realmente se está viviendo y se está soportando en esta comunidad.
And that's why I'm speaking tonight, because I feel that the immigrants need to be heard, and I need you to hear me, because immigrants are suffering in this community, and we must bring an end to that.
Muchas gracias, y estamos, como les dije, estamos preparados para intentar el cambio, y es justo ya que se haga.
Thank you for having me tonight, and I'm looking forward to the changes that we are talking about, and to carry those out and support you in those changes as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I believe that is the last speaker, Chair. I don't see anyone else for public comment.
Thank you, Melissa. And I would like to thank all members of the public who spoke before the Commission this evening. Your voices are extremely important to the Commission. We are here to represent you, and without your voices, it makes it a lot more challenging for us to represent our members of the community. So thank you to all members of the public who, again, stayed the course with us this evening and shared their comments and their opinions and their requests with the Commission. Our next item of business is a motion to authorize the Executive Committee to determine and execute follow-up actions and recommendations on this special hearing. Director Pan, I shall hand to you for this item.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, at a previous meeting, the Commission voted to summarize the hearing and recommendations and actions. And this motion authorizes the Executive Committee to act on behalf of the entire Commission so we can fast track all of the follow-up actions. I believe that the Commission has made it clear that it wants to send something to the new administration sooner rather than later. And we want to thank all of the community advocates and leaders for submitting their comments in writing, because that'll make it a whole lot easier for the staff to pull that together for you. But this would just authorize the Executive Committee to act on your behalf.
Thank you, Director Pan. So do I have a motion to authorize the Executive Committee to determine and execute follow-up actions and recommendations on this special hearing? Commissioner Rahimi, do I have a second to the motion?
I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Radwan. Can I ask the clerk to please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Chair Kennelly?
Yes.
Chair Kennelly, yes. Chair Potts?
Yes.
Chair Potts, yes. Commissioner Insani is no longer here. Commissioner Fuji?
Yes.
Commissioner Fuji, yes. Commissioner Gaim?
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Gaim. Commissioner Kojaste? Is Commissioner Kojaste still here? Looks like he's no longer here. Commissioner Monje? Commissioner Monje is not here. Commissioner Radwan?
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Radwan. Commissioner Rahimi? Thank you, Commissioner Rahimi. Commissioner Ricarte?
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Ricarte. Commissioner Ruiz? Thank you, Commissioner Ruiz.
Gracias, Comisionada Ruiz.
Commissioner Wang?
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Wang. We have a quorum. We have 9 passing votes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Clerk Shore, and thank you, Commissioners. We look forward on the Executive Committee to moving forward the recommendations that come from this hearing. At this point, I would like to thank all of our speakers this evening, from Assembly Member David Chu, Jennifer LaForce from USCIS, Sally Kanoshita from ILRC, and each of our community-based organizations. I'm not going to go through all of the names. We really do appreciate you all taking the time to be with us this evening. We are all painfully aware of how difficult the last, indeed 8 years, I was going to say 4, but we will say 8, how the last 4 years have been in terms of dealing with the policies that have been enacted by the current administration. We look forward to the dawning of a new day starting on the 20th of January as we move forward with a new administration and with a more open and welcoming and caring nature for our immigrant communities across the country. We, as a commission, are committed to continuing to support all of you, to supporting our organisations and to supporting each individual immigrant that lives within the city and county. We look forward to going through all of the presentations that were made to us this evening. We have heard some presentations that we are already aware of, and we have been made aware of other issues that were maybe not as readily known by all members of the Commission. We have had voices of all immigrant ethnicities lifted here this evening, and I would like to thank everybody who spoke. I would like to thank all of the members of public comment. We look forward to being thoughtful and proactive in our next steps to develop recommendations that we will then carry forward and present to the Board of Supervisors and the Mayor for their review and for their positive steps forward. So again, thank you all for being with us this evening. This concludes our special hearing, and we wish all of you a wonderful rest of your evening. Moving on to the next items of business for the members of the Commission. Commissioners, we had flipped this evening's agenda and we will now go through our regular Commission agenda items. Starting with the approval of the previous meetings minutes, which were the minutes from the meeting on December 14th, 2020. These were shared with you in your packet sent from Clerk Shore earlier this week or late last week, I believe. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes as written? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adopt the minutes of Monday, December 14th, the full San Francisco Immigrant Rights Commission minutes of December 14th, 2020 as written?
Through the chair, I'll move to approve.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Do I have a second for the motion?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Wong. Can I ask the clerk to please call the roll?
Thank you. Chair Kennelly?
Yes.
Vice Chair?
Yes.
Chair Paz, yes. Commissioner Fuji?
Yes.
Commissioner Fuji, yes. Commissioner Gaim?
Yes.
Commissioner Gaim, yes. Commissioner Radwan?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Radwan, yes. Commissioner Rahimi?
Yes.
Commissioner Rahimi, yes. Commissioner Ricarte?
Yes.
Commissioner McCarthy, yes. Commissioner Ruiz? Commissioner Ruiz?
Comisionada Ruiz?
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Monje, I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you. And Commissioner Wang?
Yes.
Thank you. We have a passing vote.
Thank you, Clerk Shaw, and thank you, Commissioners. Moving on to item 10 on our agenda, which are staff reports, and Director Pan.
Hi, Commissioners. So I will speed through this, so you don't have to stay with us all night. I'll give you more detailed updates at the upcoming retreat. There is in your packet the Language Access Ordinance Quarterly Report, and I just want to give a shout out to Connie Jozami, the head of our Language Access Unit, because this was a year's worth of information that was piled into one report, and it was her very first report, and she did an excellent job. So please contact Connie if you have any questions or want more details. The long and the short of that report is that there were only two complaints collected in the last quarter of 2019. And since October 2019, all the way through December of 2020, we received 60 complaints. Much of that could be attributed to the situation with COVID-19, but that's a lot for the staff to collect and investigate. And then on item number C, the IRC applications of reappointment hearings, we're almost at the finish line. There is a new rules committee that will be headed by Supervisor Peskin. They will be scheduling a hearing for reappointment and the 2 vacancies on the commission after Prop C is certified by the California Secretary of State, which is any day now. So there are 2 open seats. They must be immigrants. And this is board appointed seats. And then all of you who are applying for reappointment. And of course, we want you to reapply. Thank you very much. And we'll let you know as soon as they've scheduled that. And then the final item is the IRC retreat and officer elections, tentatively scheduled for February 8th in the afternoon. And if you haven't already, please respond to Clerk Shore, who works extra hard to get responses from the commission so that we can get that finalized and scheduled on the calendar. And then finally, just on behalf of the OSEA staff, because my staff has received plenty of kudos, I really wanted to just thank Chair Kennelly, Vice Chair Paz, the Executive Committee, and the entire Commission for its vision and leadership. It's such a pleasure and an honor to work with all of you. This is an awesome commission, and immigrants get the job done, and you've gotten it done. This was a great hearing, so congratulations, and thank you for the honor of working with all of you. And that's my report, Chair.
Thank you, Director Pan. Thank you for those kind words on behalf of all the commissioners. Thank you. Okay, moving to our next agenda item, which is old business. Is there any old business to come before the commission this evening? Hearing none, is there any new business before the commission this evening? Hearing none. At this juncture, I would like to thank Director Pan, all of the OSEA team, Clark Shore, Melissa, Jamie, Rich, all of our interpretation team, Arturo, Vivian, Connie. Thank you all for all of the work that goes into putting together a hearing like this. There are many moving parts on the back end, and we would like, on behalf of the Commission, I would like to thank you all for your time, your dedication, and your support to get us to this point so that we can do the job that we are here to do and gather all of this amazing testimony. And I thank you in advance to the staff for all of the work that you will do to collate and pull together all of the testimony that we have heard this evening. We have heard a lot, I think we might have hit a new record or we're certainly matching the old record for one of the longest commission hearings that we have ever had. But it was worth every bit of it. We are at a very important juncture. We are looking forward to a new administration. There is a lot of good work to be done. We are delighted to know that we have a lot of great community partners out there that we can support and who will support us in the work that we do. And we look forward to working with each and all of you. Commissioners, staff, community partners, and public alike, thank you for sticking with us for this very long, for this rather extended Immigrant Rights Commission hearing. I wish you all a wonderful evening. Thank you and best of luck. And we hope to see you. We invite you all to return to us again next month on the second Monday of February.
To the chair, if I may just
Thank
add,
you and take care.
To the chair, if I may just add a final comment, I also want to really convey, on behalf of my fellow commissioners, thank you for your leadership, for your resiliency through guiding us through this hearing from your home in Ireland. It's very late night or early morning, depending on how you look at it. But thank you so much, Chair Kennelly.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you, Vice Chair Paz. Take care and see you all next month.
Get some sleep.
Take care.
I will. Good night.
Good night. Good night. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.
Thank you. We are adjourned.